Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning, Joseph. Thank you for that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Jimmy Brooks, Chair of the committee, and to my right is Vice Chair, Councillor Maggie Cullen. In addition to welcoming all members of the committee to this meeting, I would also like to welcome Councillor Steve Clegg, Executive Councillor for Adult Care and Health, Councillor Maria Hume, Executive Support Councillor for Adult Care and Health, and Martin... You're normally over there, Martin. Martin Samuels, Executive Director, Adult Care and Community Wellbeing. Before we begin, there are some standard announcements. If there was a fire alarm, please make your way out the back doors into the car park and await further instructions. The audio-visual feed for this formal public meeting is broadcast via the County Council's website and will be available to access online as well. Please have all mobile phones, laptops and iPads and any other devices on silent mode. The hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by Councillor Cullen. Please indicate early if you wish to speak. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absences or replacement members. Joseph.
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Litchfield to be replaced by Councillor Wimhurst, and also apologies from Councillor Mrs Overton to be replaced by Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Joseph. Agenda item 2, declarations of members' interest. Do we have any members wishing to declare an interest? No, thank you very much for that. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting of Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Committee held on January the 7th. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Please turn to pages 5 to 12 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Reeve. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Bean. Thank you very much. Could I have a vote all in favour of the minutes? Any against? Any abstentions? Just one. Thank you. 2. Sorry. 2. Yeah, okay, thank you. Agenda item 4, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Chairman announcements, I have no announcements at this time. Thank you very much. Moving to the Exec Councillor, Councillor Clegg, do you have any announcements?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Yes, I'd just like to make a brief announcement, if I may. I'm very pleased to announce that we're developing a new carer strategy in Lincolnshire. It's going to be co-produced by all those involved, including, of course, those with lived experience. The aim is to demonstrate the importance of unpaid carers and to ensure they are supported in this very important role. Adult social care in Lincolnshire is leading the way both nationally and regionally in this respect by informing policy. Working with the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, that's ADAS, we've set up a regional strategic group supporting councils and partners to enhance strategies and performance. This aligns with the National ADAS Unpaid Carers Group, which is co-led by our own Hayley Eccles, our Deputy DAS, and she has been invited to Windsor Castle on the 11th of February to an event hosted by the King and Queen in recognition of the role of unpaid carers. So I would like to thank the adult social care team here, and in particular her, for this important contribution to promoting the role of unpaid carers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. Martin Samuels, have you got an announcement?
I do. If I can just say thank you on behalf of Hayley to Councillor Clegg for those kind words. So in terms of announcements, members of the committee will know that I've been providing regular updates on our CQC inspection. So 2 days after the last meeting of this committee, on the 9th of January, we had a further conversation with the CQC as part of the inspection process. They gave us a tentative high-level summary of their findings from the site visit that they did with us in early December. I should be clear that there was no score or rating discussed, even provisionally, in that meeting. Following that meeting, we are providing them with some further information and clarification on some of the points that they raised, where they expressed some areas that they would like to know more or to be a bit firmer about. We are still in a position where we are expecting the draft report in about 2 weeks' time, and we are expecting that final report to be published after the election period in early May. So I will give further updates as they occur, but that's where we are, Chair.
Thank you for that, Martin. I'll now invite members to ask questions pertinent to the announcements only. Noting nothing that is relevant to business, consider it later in the agenda, please. This should be brief, and members may not make statements as this part. Only questions, please. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder if I could put Professor Ward on the spot. I noticed that, well, it won't be any surprise, will it, Derek? I noticed that we had a really great visit the other day from the Chief Medical Officer for England, Professor Chris Whitty, and I just wondered if you could update the committee on how the visit went and what exactly he came to see and listen to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. Yes, we were very happy to host Professor Whitty as the Chief Medical Officer for England. It was a bit of an under-the-radar visit because what he tends to do for his annual report is he visits different parts of the country depending on what the nature of his annual report is going to be. I'm not going to announce that here because he'll kill me. It was a really, really good visit. We had conversations with one of our primary care networks and the GPs therein. We visited one of our care homes and he saw firsthand the fabulous work that the care home does, and also some of the work that the council supports them on around infection prevention and control, which is unusual across the country. We went to visit Lives as well, our community first responder. He was very, very impressed with a lot of the work that Lives did. Had the pleasure of having lunch with our RAF colleagues and had a good chat with them around both veteran health but also current service personnel health and care, and we actually started the day by a visit to our Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership, which is our substance use and alcohol partnership in Grantham. So picked him up in Grantham and drove him probably about a quarter of a way around Lincolnshire. He has visited us before, so he does understand the size of the county, but really, really positive. As I said, quiet a visit for him to get some background information that hopefully we will see in his annual report later on in the year.
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. Thank you, Derek. And I'd like to concur regarding Lives. They are an absolutely fantastic service, and they was there when I needed them. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. That's all very positive. I just wanted to make the point that I've been a member of this council for 5 years, and until May, I was never told what I was allowed to say at scrutiny and how long I was allowed to speak for. We get this at the beginning of every meeting. You must be brief. You can't say that. You can't say that. This is scrutiny, and the clue is in the title. And while I appreciate, and this happened at health scrutiny, we are meant to keep to what's on the agenda. I get that, but telling us how long we can speak for is really not appropriate. Please let me finish. This is meant to be, and you and I get on personally, but this is meant to be robust scrutiny. And if we need to get to somewhere in a roundabout way, that's fair enough, but please do not tell us what we're allowed to talk about and how long we're allowed to talk for, because I'm going to speak to the monitoring officer after this, and potentially the LGA, because scrutiny should be just that, scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I don't remember telling you you had a time limit to speak, but that could be as long as you like. Thank you very much. I shall move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much. Thank you for those, Martin and Councillor Clegg and Derek. Thank you. Agenda item 5. Adult Care and Community Wellbeing Budget Proposal for 2026-2027. This report provides an overview of the revenue and a capital budget proposal for 26-27 for adult care and public health services. The report will be presented by Martin Samuels, Executive Director for Adult Care and Community Wellbeing. Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So it will not surprise you that I'm going to start by saying that this has been a challenging budget round. I'm aware we say that every year, and every year it seems to get more challenging and more difficult. I'm not going to try to summarise the overall position of the Council. That is set out in the report, but the summary has been done very ably by our Section 151 officer, Michelle Grady, at Exec a couple of weeks ago, and I would work on the basis that members of the committee are familiar with the overall position, so I'm not going to go into that. In terms of adult care and community wellbeing, the vast majority of the spend of the Directorate is in terms of adult social care, so I'm going to focus my comments on adult social care. The main drivers for expenditure in adult social care are demography, complexity and fee rates. So picking those up, the population of the county is growing every year. There are more people living in the county, and therefore there are more people who have needs for adult social care. We're also seeing that the proportion of people in the county who need social care is growing. So every year it's a larger and larger proportion of a larger and larger population, and therefore that is a significant pressure. And that is also linked to the fact that our colleagues in the NHS have been remarkably successful in keeping people alive and well, or fairly well, who would frankly previously not have been still with us. And that is, of course, part of the reason for the growth in the overall population. But that does mean to say that we have a growing number of people, not just more people, but people who have a growing level of need, a growing level of complexity. And if you look at the figures in the budget, we've had to allocate some £19 million of additional expenditure to cover that growth in demand through more people and greater need for people. And then picking up the third area, fee rates, the operating environment in which care providers have to work has become increasingly challenging. So this council is not a provider of any direct care services. All of them are commissioned from external organisations. And those organisations are finding that on top of the above inflation increases in the national living wage, there are a range of other pressures in the operating environment that are putting up costs. Some of those apply just in the care sector, some of those apply across the whole of the economy. And again, if you look at the figures in the report, we've had to allocate a further £16 million for those factors. So £35 million put together. And I would draw the committee's attention that 1% on council tax raises about £4 million. So just putting that in context. For the MTFP process, we've done forecasts over to 2030 in terms of what we think demand and cost pressures will be. Within that, we have to recognise we're starting from a position where Lincolnshire County Council is one of the lowest spending authorities in the country on adult social care, and in particular on older people. So in fact, we tend to be in the bottom 3 or 4 nationally in terms of what we spend per head of our older population. That's generally through us having very low fee rates. Our fee rates are 15 to 20% lower than the average, so that's probably in the region of £150 to £200 a week for a residential care placement. We pay less than the average. And then we also have a lower proportion of our older population in the care system than other parts of the country. So we're already working very hard to keep costs down, but nonetheless there are significant pressures. So key issues that I draw the committee's attention to. One is there have been significant changes in funding arrangements. What the government interestingly calls funding simplification. I think the amount of detail that we've had to go into to explain and clarify what the funding simplification looks like gives you a sense of where it is. The main issue is that although the numbers end up looking very different, to a very large extent this is grants being rolled into the baseline. There's no additional funding there. There are some areas where there's additional funding, but in general the funding simplification is just putting the same amount of money in under different headings. The other aspect that I draw the committee's attention to is the work around our new adult strategy that was signed off by the executive just recently. This is absolutely centred on maximising individuals' independence so they can live the life they choose in the communities they choose, thereby reducing need for care and therefore supporting sustainable finances for the council. We're doing this through a strength-based, person-centred approach. And that has significant implications for the budget. And I've almost finished, Chair, so bear with me. So a couple of things. So we are seeking to work with people so that we help them avoid a crisis, because what we find very much is that apart from the fact that a crisis is a poor experience for someone to go through, very often crisis means that someone goes into a much more intensive, much more restrictive, much more expensive care package. And if we can avoid a crisis, then people are able to live in their own homes, leading their own lives longer. We're also seeking to avoid over-prescription of care. Members of the committee will recall that I've previously described the care system in Lincolnshire as being in some ways a little traditional. And what we have found sometimes is that there's been a bit of a view that if a bit of social care is a good thing, a lot of it must be a better thing. And the reality is that a little bit of social care can be a very good thing, but a lot of it, if it's more than you really need, is actually quite a bad thing for you. So we're looking to avoid over-prescription, and that is drawing us into areas about a focus on technology-enabled care, looking very closely at our mental health adult social care services and making sure that we're really focused there, and a methodology that we've discussed in previous meetings about called Better Lives, which is a new and very focused way for social workers to work. And we are anticipating that will reduce the cost pressures by £3 or £4 million together, those range of interventions. And then we are also looking to withdraw from certain non-statutory services that we've looked at, and we've come to the conclusion that either these duplicate services that are available already elsewhere, or are just not particularly effective, not particularly good return on investment. Should be clear that decisions on all of those changes, it's not a very long list, but decisions on all of those will in due course come through scrutiny, and so this committee will have an opportunity to look at those in detail. And again, those bring, along with various savings within the teams, we're looking that will save us about another £3 million or so. In terms of future challenges, the Department of Health and Social Care is very much pushing a neighbourhood health and wellbeing approach to shift the focus very much onto prevention at community level. That will lead to a replacement of the Better Care Fund. We are awaiting the national guidance, but that will have a significant impact on the way that we budget and the services that we apply. We are continuing to focus on supported accommodation so that people can continue to live in their communities, not in residential care. I'm not knocking residential care. It is very much the right thing for people at the right time, but many people with a bit of support could remain in their communities, and we're looking to expand that. And then the final area is in terms of workforce. The ratio of people in the labour market compared to those who need care is changing and getting worse all the time, and there is constant demand for workers from other parts of the economy. So we're looking very carefully to see what is it that we can do to attract people into the social care workforce, and that will provide us the value for money. So I'll stop there. I'm sure there's a lot of detail members of the committee will want to go into, but I hope that's given an overview.
Thank you for that, Martin. Councillor Clun, do we have any speakers? Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Martin for a very detailed report, so thank you. Quick question is, should the cost savings from changes to the integrated lifestyle service and the housing-related support service not happen, how would it affect the budget, and can the service afford for these services to remain unchanged? Thank you.
So obviously no decision has been made on these. were the executive to take a view that they wanted to continue those services, and I say no decision has been taken, there are ways that we can adjust the budget. We can look at short-term funding arrangements, so it wouldn't cause any kind of immediate crisis. We just have to look again at the budget.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Martin. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick question regarding the financial risk found mainly on page 22. The report highlights the recent increases in demand to go above the forecast. What further work needs to be done to address this issue or to manage the risk that the issue spells out? Thank you.
So as I've said, we've been forecasting £19 million of additional costs due to growth in demand. You can see that even if we're out by 1% or 2%, that can have a very significant impact on the budget, and therefore that remains the major risk for us. The way that we are aiming to address that is really, as I said earlier, the new adult social care strategy very much focused on the working with people to enable them to retain their independence, to thereby have less need for care, and therefore to support the financial sustainability of the council. So that strength-based, person-centred, prevention-focused approach is absolutely the heart of what we're doing. We are as confident as we can be that that will have the impact that we think it will have, and therefore we've built a prudent budget, so we haven't overestimated what we think the impact of the preventative activity might be. So I think we've taken a position where we are confident that the preventative activity and the strength-based and person-centred approaches will have at least the level of impact that we've built in the budget. So I think the risk of us needing more beyond that is relatively limited because we've been, as I say, quite prudent about that and quite cautious.
Thank you very much, Martin. That's really reassuring. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. Thank you, Martin. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a brief point of clarification. At the bottom of page 18, we'll start in there, it talks about options for the future delivery of the integrated lifestyle services. And I just want to be very clear, if any member of this committee votes in favour of this budget, are we then saying that we're voting in favour of getting rid of the elements of the integrated lifestyle service that we're talking about next? And I'd also like to make a request that all of the votes on this budget of individual councillors are recorded within the minutes, so we know who voted for it and who voted against. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lee. Do we have a seconder for that, for the recorded vote? Yeah, could you show of hands in favour, please? I think that's enough, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you for that. Martin, could you answer Councillor Lee, please?
I don't think there's anything particular I can respond to that. I think that was a procedural issue. So I think the expectation is that the committee will make recommendations on the RLS paper that the executive will consider at its meeting next week. And I think in terms of the budget, again, I think the expectation is that the committee will make comments which the executive will take into account. So I'm not sure that the committee is being asked to vote on whether the committee supports or is against the budget. I think the committee is being asked to make comments from an adult care and public health perspective on the budget for the executive to take into consideration when it makes its recommendation to full council. I apologise, that's sounding like quite a long process, but as members will of course be aware, ultimately the budget and the council tax decision are full council decisions. So I think the process is this committee makes comments which the executive considers, and that is then taken into account by full council. Dem Services colleagues may want to correct me if I've got that wrong, but I think that's the process. So I think in answer to your question, I don't think the committee is being asked to vote whether you are in favour or against the budget. You're being asked to make comments that the executive can take into account when they consider and Dem Services are nodding at me, so that's I think I've got that right.
Thanks, Martin. I think for the purpose of absolute clarity, I shall vote against. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Bean.
Thank you. Could I just ask, what are the reasons and the benefits for the realignment of the funding structure outlined in paragraph 2.5?
Can you just guide me as to which page that's on?
Page 16.
So essentially we had a restructure of the directorate in the middle of last year. So previously, in terms of adult social care, I had a division which was responsible for mental health service and learning and disability services, and another division which was responsible for services for older people and people with a physical disability. And so we essentially divided the services by age cohort and diagnosis. And it had become increasingly clear that that was not a helpful way of structuring the directorate, that quite often older people may have a mental health issue, people with a physical disability may also have a learning disability, so there's a range of crossovers, and we were essentially putting people into separate diagnostic boxes. And so the directorate was restructured, so we now have almost all of the adult social care functions in under the Deputy DAS, under Hayley Eccles, and then we have a support division that has responsibility for commissioning and also runs our day centres, which is a preventative service. So it was all driven by what made sense for the business, and therefore, having changed what the structure was in terms of it being sensible for the business, it makes sense for the finances to change, the financial presentation to change, because the financial presentation was done on an organisational basis and it needs to be changed for the new organisation, so that I can point to my assistant directors and say, this is your budget, this is what you are accountable for, and I can then hold them to account. So it's purely responding to changes in the way we've structured the business rather than anything deeper than that.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. So obviously the report suggests that cost pressures beyond 2026-27 are expected to be lower than recent trends. And I think despite the fact we know we've got an ageing population in Lincolnshire, we've got rising complexity of need and ongoing inflation risk, what evidence gives us the confidence that demand will moderate? And what is the contingency if these assumptions prove to be a little more optimistic? And then ultimately with the proposals, can you sort of list which services you think would likely to be discontinued?
There's about 4 questions in there, so I'll try to remember. If I forget bits, then please prompt me. So so in terms of demand, so we've done the best forecasts that we can, where we've based on experience and what we've seen in over the last several years and what we're seeing in the other authorities, and we've been, as I said earlier, we've been quite prudent in those. So we've been, if anything, possibly assumed that our preventative activity will be less effective than we hope that it will be. So we've tried to take a sort of reasonable worst case approach to the demand figures and a slightly cautious approach to the prevention figures. So we're hopeful that the figures will be no worse than we've set out here. In terms of the future demand, 2 things come out. One is that we've been working and using the council's corporate figures for inflation, and those corporate figures have been based on the assumption that inflation will be lower in future years than it has been in recent years. So that's not a figure that we've been working on from an adult social care perspective, in the sense it's not an adult social care figure, it's a corporate assumption based, taken from finance colleagues who are very much better placed than I am to make assessments on that. So that's part of the reason the expectation that will be slightly lower, and it does look as though the increases in the national living wage in future will be a little bit lower than the rate of increase will be a little bit lower than it has been. So that's part of the factor in terms of the lower cost pressures. And then we've been looking at the range of my finance colleagues have just through the ether reminded me that the inflation forecast is based on Bank of England forecasts, and therefore it's not, you know, expert though they are, in my finance colleagues, they are relying on even more expert people, if such a thing were possible. So then, in terms of the reducing demand, we've been looking really carefully and modelling what we think the impact of the technology-enabled care will be, what we think the impact of the social care strategy in terms of the strength-based, person-centred approach. And we have increasing confidence in that we're now seeing the impact of work that we have been doing. So we're seeing practical impact. So as an example, since the summer, we've been working very closely with our partners in LPFT, the Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust, who deliver our adult social care mental health service. We've been working very closely with them to review their practice and the way that they are applying adult social care national criteria. And as a result of that, we have seen the forecast expenditure for the current financial year reduced by about £2 million. So that's not a saving in the sense of we're not cutting a service, we're not taking anything away from anyone, but we're being more rigorous in making sure that we're absolutely clear what is the care intervention that a person needs that will be most effective for them, and are we getting that at the most appropriate price. And by doing that, I say just over the last 6 months, we've done work which has allowed us to reduce the forecast there by £2 million. And so we can apply that expertise and that experience across the piece. And therefore, I think I can give quite good reassurance to the committee that the figures that we've put in for that are quite robust. So you then asked in terms of services that may be coming forward. I will be a little bit discreet about some of that on the basis that we are in decision-making processes, and therefore there are, while we are having conversations with organisations that provide some of those services, in some instances the staff who deliver that service may not have been involved in the conversation. And so I think you'll understand. I prefer not to be in a position where I'm saying, oh, we're looking at XYZ service, where the organisation is well aware of that, but the staff are not. And I wouldn't want staff to be finding out through this process. So what I would say is that there are, apart from the ones that members of the committee will be well aware about. So obviously there's a conversation about the integrated lifestyle service as our next item. Members of the committee will be aware that we are out to consultation on the future of the housing related support service. There are probably half a dozen other services, each in the region of the sort of £200,000 to £300,000 level, where we are in. These are preventative services that have benefit, but we are confident that either they are duplicating or the value add isn't sufficient. And there are probably 4 or 5 of those that are in process. But as I say, the specific decision reports will come forward and will be brought to this committee in due course. So I'm aware I'm not giving you a full answer there, but I hope you understand why it'd be better for me not to.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate there's a staffing element there on that. And I value the reassurance that you've provided. I think it'd be good to understand when we're at the point where staff are being consulted, for then the committee to be sort of informed at the same time, so we understand what's happening in the wider picture. And forgive me if I'm wrong with this. I think in terms of the budget position then, in terms of, from what I read, is that we rely quite heavily on the phased fair funding gains and the potential for maximised council tax increases as a budget. Now, I appreciate politically we're not in the position of increasing it to the maximum, and we'll obviously have a budget meeting about that. But how resilient is this budget if the fairer funding reforms are delayed or adjusted nationally, or if, as a council, we decide not to increase the council tax by the maximum? What resilience have we got in terms of managing our budget and allocation?
So in terms of broader funding for the council, I think I'll ask Pam to come in just a second. I'm going to pick up one specific point because so you were talking about fair funding. I think it's worth making comment about fair pay. There's lots of fair things going on at the moment, but worth making comment on that. So because that is relevant and is an important factor for us. So the government has taken legislation through to take forward fair pay in the adult social care world, which is designed essentially to increase the wages of staff who work in adult social care. And having seen the work that people who are currently on national living wage do in the care sector, it is extraordinary, and the dedication and commitment and skill of those individuals is quite awe-inspiring. And so I think you would expect me, and I'm very happy to say that I think they deserve a pay rate which reflects that skill and that compassion and commitment. So the government has set up the fair pay process, or is in the process of setting up that fair process. They are expecting that will lead to an increase in wage rates that will inevitably lead to a significant increase in cost for councils. We have received a small amount of additional funding for the 26-27 year, around about 2.3, 2.4 million, which we are proposing to build into fee rates so that all of that money will transfer to providers and therefore to staff. But clearly, if the government were to proceed with that further down that route, and there were to be a gap between the increase in pay rates and therefore the cost to councils, between that and the funding that government gave, then that would form a pressure on councils, and that would be a difficult pressure for us to address. But in terms of but we'll just have to see how that goes. And the LGA and ADAS have been very clear to government that government needs to fund the entirety of that additional cost, and we will see how that turns out. But in terms of the fair funding arrangements and the pressure on the overall budget, I'll turn to Pam.
Thank you, Martin. So the exec report on the 6th of January confirms that the government have published, as part of the provisional settlement that we received in December, that the fair funding for Lincolnshire between 2026 right the way through to 2029 is indicating 85 million. The net impact of that in 26-27 is £36 million for LCC. So whilst years 2 onwards may change, the year 26-27, which is the focus for the budget, has that 36 million in. I suppose putting it in the context of Martin's very well articulated the cost pressures that are included in the report in front of you. Across LCC, our cost pressures have increased by 82 million. So to put in some context, we've got the 36 million coming from the fair funding. There is also in the executive report the other efficiencies and savings that are proposed across to get us to a balanced budget. Also in that exec report are the options for the council tax that will be discussed in the meetings for OSMB executive in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Martin. Just to pick up on Councillor Lee's point, I do see, I think, the point that she may be raising is we are asked at this point, at agenda item 5, to consider this report, the report on the budget, on the overall budget for adult care and community wellbeing, public health, etc., and invited to make comments on the proposals. The difficulty is, of course, that the very next item is going to give us the detail, we hope, on the integrated lifestyle future arrangements, which appears to be one of the biggest changes that is proposed. So at that point, item 6, we'll be asked to say whether or not we as a committee support the recommendations, particularly on integrated lifestyle. So it's a little bit, if I might say, cart before the horse. It's a bit difficult to give comment overall. So I'll certainly reserve my comments until we get to the next bit, if I may. But I'm you know, I'm a substitute anyway. I'm not an expert here, so I will wait and hear the debate. But I look forward to that debate, really, before I think we can make an informed judgment. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
I just want to respond to what Pam said with the greatest of respect, because as well as the increased, I think it's probably the best fairer funded settlement we've had in years. But as well as that, there are £9 million savings in pension contributions and £1 million in posts not filled, as well as all the cuts that are coming. And we've got 47 million, I understand, in reserves. And I do understand that we can't use the 47 million to save the integrated lifestyle services. But ultimately, that budget is being raided to fill a need somewhere else. So what I'm saying is, we've got a lot of money in the piggy bank for a rainy day, and actually it's pouring outside. So I think we could make the point that we've actually got quite a lot of money in reserves. So I think it's about having a broader picture than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. You've already touched on quite a number of the points what I was going to raise, but mental health, you talked a little bit, which was reassuring around mental health services, but we currently deliver that through a Section 75 arrangement. Now, I think that's been in place for a good number of years now. Question what I was going to ask is, one, are we assured that we get quality services around that? And are those services cost effective? And I suppose, has there been any work done around the various options around service delivery around mental health? And what was the outcomes of that? And obviously there was some advantages and disadvantages in terms of actually the way we deliver around mental health at the moment. I suppose what's the pros and cons on that, and have we explored those various options, and would there be any cost savings bringing that back in-house as an option? And then the other one, and I think for most of the districts, there's conversations going on around housing-related support services, and it's around delivery around outcomes. And I think as a social care service, we deliver some very good, high-quality services. But there's always a challenge around delivering outcomes, and one way of delivering an outcome is having a pathway to for people to actually live more independently on those low-level type services. And there's a dearth of supply across some of the districts now around housing-related support. So it's a plea, really, in terms of actually they do provide excellent valued services. And it's about your thoughts in terms of how you see that funding taking place around that low-level support, which enables outcomes for people to live more independently, I suppose. So welcome that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Young. So again, a couple of questions there. I've been scribbling notes, so hopefully I'll be able to pick that up. So as you say, in terms of mental health, adult social care, for probably about 20 years or so, the County Council has delegated those functions to the NHS, currently LPFT. This is one of those areas where I was being a little bit coy in my answer to Councillor Cook earlier because of the issue of staff notification. I can be a little bit less coy here on in terms of this because staff are aware that we're working on this. So, as I say, for the last 20 years or so, Lincolnshire County Council has delegated its adult social care mental health functions to LPFT. At the time that was done, that was quite a common thing across the country to do on the basis that the adult social care mental health is a fairly small proportion of adult social care, and it's a small proportion of the mental health world. And so there was a logic about saying we should integrate mental health services and therefore bring together the clinical NHS mental health services with the social care services of councils. And Lincolnshire was one of many authorities across the country where joint arrangements were made. And indeed, in previous roles, I was involved in several parts of the country where I was involved in doing precisely that. Experience over time has shown that perhaps the benefits aren't as great as we thought they were, and the disbenefits are greater than we thought that they were. And in particular, what we have found, I think, is two things. One is that the NHS do an incredible job. They do it from a medical, clinical perspective, and the perspective of medical and clinical care is a different perspective from the perspective of social care. And I'm not saying that we have either is better than the other, but they are different, and there is a value in having different perspectives. And what I think we have to an extent found in Lincolnshire, as has been found in many other parts of the country, is that the integration of the adult social care function into an NHS organisation has, to an extent, resulted in a medicalisation of the social care approach, and therefore, to an extent, the loss of that particular unique social care approach. We also had set up an arrangement whereby, rather than having a pooled budget and a risk share, which is the arrangement, for example, that we have with learning disability, we had set up an arrangement where we simply delegated the staffing function to LPFT, and all of the cost risk still sits with the county council. And therefore, we're in a position that effectively a third party is making prescribing decisions that the county council then pays for. And again, there's a logic to that arrangement, but I think, again, we're finding that there is evidence that the disbenefits are outweighing the benefits. So we have been working with LPFT, looking at this arrangement, and it is now in the public domain that the position we've come to is a sense by both organisations that probably the current arrangement has run its course, and that we need to look at a different arrangement. And one possibility is that we may bring the service back into the council. We are going through a full options appraisal, and that's looking at should we essentially carry on with the existing arrangement, should we bring it back in-house, is there a different way, is there an entirely different organisation that could carry on the function. So that options appraisal, as I said, all of these issues are due to come to the executive, and Scrutiny will have an opportunity to look at in due course. So that options appraisal is due to come to the executive on, I think, the 3rd of March, and therefore we'll be looking to build that into. It'll therefore be the next meeting of this committee, so that you'll have an opportunity to look at that process. In terms of savings, at the moment we're working on the basis that the spend on care packages dwarfs the spend on staffing. It's about 30-something million on care packages, a couple of million on staff. And we think that we can reduce the care package cost by a significant amount. And while there may be scope for savings in the staffing, the focus is on making sure that people get the right care at the right price, rather than on making savings through staffing. So I hope that gives you an answer in terms of mental health. In terms of the housing-related support service, so apologies, Chair, it's turning into a slightly longer answer, but it's two quite complicated issues. Housing-related support service, as I've said, we are out to consultation at the present on the future of that service. A report is due to come to the executive. I want to say June. Colleagues may correct me if I've got that wrong, but I think it's in June. It will, of course, come to this committee beforehand. I think so I don't want to prejudge the position on that, and I think I should also be clear that while the budget is built on certain assumptions, that shouldn't be taken as therefore saying what the decision of the executive will be. We are used enough to adjusting budgets if necessary. If the executive chooses to go down a particular route, then we can make sure that works. I think the HRS is clearly a service which is valued by the people who receive it. It has a beneficial impact for them. It has a beneficial impact for Lincolnshire. I think the questions we're particularly looking at is it's not a statutory function of the county council, and the analysis that we've done suggests that the bulk of the benefit falls for other organisations rather than the county council. So those are factors that we will take into account in preparing the options for the executive in June. But as I say, that report before it comes to the executive will come here, and this committee will have a full opportunity to discuss and make comments for consideration when the executive does look at that. But as I say, I think that's in June.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Martin, for that long. No, it's fine. Thank you ever so much. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Clegg, we've heard this morning that Martin has said that it's very likely that some services are going to be cut. So you're looking at cutting some services, and I completely get the fact that when there are staff at risk, then you don't want to be broadcasting in a public meeting before staff are made aware. But by its very nature in this area of work, it's very likely that those who are to be impacted are the most vulnerable, particularly from our residents' point of view. It does say on this, at the very end of this paper, about the equality impact analysis. Have you now got that information in order to be able to make those decisions? If you haven't, when are you going to get that information, would be my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. I believe we do have that information, but if I could refer to to Martin Samuels just to confirm that.
Yes, I'm not sure whether that's a promotion or a demotion. So the report that will go to the executive next week will have the full EIA for the budget as a whole. I mean, I'm not sure, Pam.
Yes, it will, and all of the individual decisions which Martin and Councillor Clegg referred to earlier will have the EIA attached to them. So the decisions that go to exec, which will be scrutinised beforehand, will have the EIA relating to that particular decision in each one. So you will have the opportunity through that, Councillor Woolley. Thank you.
Next question. Thank you for that, Pam. Next question. On the exec papers of the 6th of January, there was the statement that the public health reserve was going to be used for something else, and I think something else turns out that it's going to go into children's or something like that. I think it's about 1.8 million. What I can't quite understand is that the same amount of money that's referred to in the papers here? There's a comment about, if I may just read out, public health services are continuing to forecast delivery across the life of the MTFP, but will need to draw on the dedicated public health grant reserve for any unexpected economic challenges. Well, if you've already taken it, if it's the same amount of money and you've already taken it to put into the children's Better Start or whatever it is, where is this money going to be coming from?
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. Well, it'll be coming from the reserves.
The public health reserve, from the way that it's worded in the executive paper, suggests that there is only 1.8 million in the public health reserve, and that is going to be used for the children's Better Start. Well, if it's gone, it can't be used here. Can't be used twice.
No, I see. I take your point. Again, I'll refer to Martin Samuels.
So I'll give an overall response, and then I'll ask Gemma Hatton, who's my finance business lead, if there's anything she wants to add. So no, the public health grant reserve is significantly greater than 1.8 million. I think it's about 10 or 12 million. So the suggestion, the recommendation is to take a proportion of it to support services, eligible services in children's, but that will still leave the bulk of the public health grant reserve available. There are a range of things we're looking to do that. As an example, we are looking to support the rollout of our technology-enabled care service through the Public Health Grant Reserve. I would note that obviously at the end of each year, the Director of Public Health, who sat right behind me, and the Section 151 officer are required to sign off to say that that money has been spent in ways that are consistent with the public health grant conditions, and of course we will make sure that both of them are entirely able to make that declaration. So just to reassure you, we're not spending the whole of the reserve. There will be the bulk of it will still be left.
Right.
Can I just bring Derek in? He just
Yep.
wants to add something to that, Councillor Wally.
Yeah, just it is a little bit complicated, so I'll do the headlines. If the revenue spend from the ILS or other revenue spend within the public health grant is no longer chosen by the executive to continue, that will be revenue spend within the public health grant going forwards, because we've had indication from the Department of Health that actually the public health grant will increase slightly over the next 3 years. We do have in the region of £8 million in the public health grant reserve that is currently uncommitted as well. So there's two different things. Just to pick out the specific questions, housing related support, integrated lifestyle services within the current medium-term financial plan are all profiled through as revenue spend. If the executive chooses not to spend that there, then it becomes revenue spend that can be spent somewhere else, separate to in the region of £8 million uncommitted public health grant, which is a separate question for obviously Councillor Clegg and the executive about the priorities that the executive have for public health spend. Because it's a reserve, once it's gone, it's gone. It's not recurring revenue. Hopefully that clarifies the position, and as we go through, happy to clarify whether what we're talking about in each situation is revenue spend from the core grant or whether it's reserve, if that will help.
Thank you, Chairman. If I
think
may
Martin just wanted to
back.
come in as well, Councillor Wally.
Yeah, just a quick addition, and just to provide a reassurance that Department of Health and Social Care recommends a level of public health grant reserve that every council should hold, and the proposals in the budget plan mean that we're still above that minimum level of reserve that DHSE recommends that we should hold. So there'll always be a bit there retained.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I think all I would say to you is that the wording within the exec papers for me is slightly misleading, because when it says the budget proposal assumes that the public health grant reserve is maximised, that implies to me that the whole lot's being used, and so there won't be any more. So you can hopefully understand where I'm coming from as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee, this will be the last question because I believe we've had a good bash around with this one. So
thank you, but
the
again, I
chair's
would
yours.
point out for the record, this is meant to be robust scrutiny. There
It
shouldn't be
certainly
a
is.
limit.
I'm just a little bit cautious because obviously the next agenda item is going to be really, really long.
Yeah, it actually is a really easy one. I feel I'm saving it up.
Lovely.
Page 16, 2.4, third bullet point, talks about the Public Protection Scrutiny Committee. To my knowledge, we've not had such a committee for 9 months now. Do you mean the Community Safety Committee? I'm actually on that committee, so
yes,
can we have
yes,
some
my
clarification?
apologies.
I'm not being clever either, I just think it's really important that we know what we're voting on.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lee. No problem. Thank you for all your questions and comments, everybody.
Hi everyone, just to step in. Just to clarify, with regards to what's been voted on, it's not to endorse anything, it's purely to pass on comments to the executive. And so we'll need to just check if you still want to do a recorded vote on that, you're fine to. But again, it is if you vote to disagree, then you vote in to not pass the comments on, which makes my life a little bit easier, but I assume you probably don't want to do that. But thank you.
Thanks for that, but I'd still like the recorded vote, and we have taken a vote on it. Thank you.
Right then, so everybody knows we're voting to pass the comments on to the exec, who is also here as well. Could I have a show of hands in favour, please? This is to pass on the comments that everybody's made. Yeah, anybody against? That's one. Any abstentions? Yeah, no worries, thank you very much. Thank you for that. That is carried. I propose that the committee supports the 2026-27 budget proposal for the Adult Care and Public Health Service, and that we agree to pass on comments to the executive for his consideration on February 3rd, from February the 3rd. Can you please raise your hands if you agree? Anybody against? That's one. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you. Agenda item 6. Integrated Lifestyle Service, future arrangements. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found on pages 25 to 112 of the agenda pack. This report seeks approval for the future arrangements of the ILS, and this decision is due to be considered by the executive on February the 3rd, 2026. The report will be presented by Martin Samuels, Executive Director for Adult Care and Community Wellbeing. Martin, would you like to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the Integrated Lifestyle Service is one of our major preventative services. It is an integrated service that supports people who are looking to stop smoking, to increase their level of physical activity, to address weight management or obesity issues, or who have issues in terms of their alcohol intake. It's been independently evaluated. It's a good service, it has a good impact, and it has a good return on investment. However, we are in a position, as has been described, the report we've just gone through, where the council is in a challenging budget position, and we need to look at where all areas of spending are being used, and to see whether they are the best way of spending. So while we are, I think, very clear that the ILS is a good service, the question that we need to consider is whether it is the best service. The position has changed quite significantly since this issue was first brought to the attention of the committee and the view of the executive. So as it says in the report, the Department of Health and Social Care changed the rules in December, so last month, and as part of the funding simplification that we were talking about earlier, a number of previously separate ring-fenced grants in relation to smoking cessation were rolled into the overall public health grant. In the process, DHSC introduced a new ring fence within the ring fence. So we are now in a position where the grant conditions require the council to maintain the full expenditure on smoking cessation activity from the combination of what we were spending previously, the money that we were being given through the Smoke-Free Generation grant, and a further amount of money that, from a national scheme about supporting people who are smoking cigarettes to instead switch to using vapes. And that totals £2.9 million, taking those three together. And one of the conditions of the public health grant is that the council should continue to spend that amount of money every year on smoking cessation areas. And I should note that will then need to be uprated in line with inflation, so it won't be a cash figure. And therefore, the issue of whether Lincolnshire should or should not have a smoking cessation service, in a sense, comes off the table because the government has made it a condition that we either have one or the government take the money away and pay somebody else to pay for that. So it makes sense for the county council to have it. And so therefore, we're looking at the other services within the other elements within the integrated lifestyle service around obesity, weight management, and alcohol use. And therefore looking at, well, where is it that would be most effective for the Lincolnshire population for this funding to be spent. There is a strong argument that says that services focused on children on a early start in life are a really good area to spend funding, that it is there's a proven case that spending public health funding on children can lead to lifelong benefits, and that the argument that prevention is better than cure is a strong argument, and therefore the suggestion is that the funding that currently is in the ILS to the tune of about 1.3 million that is currently used on those obesity, weight management and physical activity and alcohol services should be moved instead and used for the Best Start Lincolnshire programme, which is a proven service which works with children and their families to help them to have the best start in life. We've done the analysis. This is clearly a service which of its nature is entirely appropriate for public health grant money to be spent on. So therefore the recommendation in the report is really a sort of three-part, that the council should commission a standalone smoking cessation service at the budget level that has been set by DHSC. I should be clear that that isn't a case, can't be a case of simply maintaining the smoking cessation elements of the ILS, because it is an integrated service. We will need to end the ILS service and commission a new standalone smoking cessation service, that we would take the funding that is currently allocated for the balance and stability element of the ILS, which is proven to reduce falls by older people and therefore reduce cost into the health and social care system, that we take that funding and build it into other services that are designed to maintain that preventative approach, that we end the other elements of the integrated lifestyle service in a phased manner to ensure that no one who is in that service is left sort of mid-programme, and to enable us to undertake the full procurement and mobilisation for the standalone smoking cessation service, and therefore the proposal to extend the ILS contract up until the end of March 2027, so the end of the coming financial year, and then to reallocate the funding thereby released through the public health grant to the Best Start Lincolnshire service. So that's a sort of summary of the report. I'll open it to questions then, Chair.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that report. I'll like to now invite members of the committee to speak on this item. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, Martin, for a very detailed and comprehensive report there. I'll keep the question brief, Chair, because I know other people are going to have lots of questions and things, but I'd just like to ask, how would the performance of the proposed service be monitored and reviewed, and what early indicators should we expect to see that the service is meeting residents' needs effectively? Thank you.
So on this one, I'm going to turn to my colleague who's sat a couple of rows behind me, Charlotte Gray, who commissions the Best Start Lincolnshire service and therefore is familiar with the contract management arrangements and the performance arrangements. Charlotte.
Hi, thank you. So in terms of how, well, there's something around how we already monitor the service and its performance, because it already aligns in terms of public health benefits. So what we're looking for, in particular, the outcomes are set out in the paper, but looking at the initiation, for example, of breastfeeding rates, looking at making sure in terms of healthy lifestyle, in terms of that we're delivering the Healthy Child programme, where there are a number of mandated elements to that from a public health perspective. We're looking to make sure we've got a really good reach across our communities and families, so that we're seeing as a service that has a universal offer as well as a more targeted offer, that we've got a really good reach in terms of disadvantaged communities as well, that those families are accessing services. And that we also have things like the National Child Measurement Programme in terms of measuring children's weight at particular times and whether we're having an impact on seeing those levels of improvement.
I think it's clear, you know, we already work really closely with our colleagues in public health, and that would continue. And as, you know, as we go through the future commissioning cycle around Best Start services, we will be making sure that we also review and refine all of the measures and objectives to make sure that we can demonstrate the evidence that investing in this service is having the impact that it needs to have for our children and families.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Martin, for the report. And I'd just like to say that I totally support the renewed focus on the children's aspect and starting them young, and everything hopefully will work a lot better in the future. I just would like to have some details, if possible, that people who are affected by the changes. You said that measures will be put in position to support them transition away from whatever's currently available. Do you have any details of what those type of measures are going to be, or is it a bit too early for that to have any more detail? Thank you.
I mean, I think what I can say on that point, I mean, as you say, there'll be detail to work through, and of course, because the you know, this is a pre-decision scrutiny, so we have to be careful that, to be clear, the executive has not made the decision yet, but in terms of that issue of transition, as I say, a key factor in extending the current ILS contract until the end of the next financial year is to make sure that there is plenty of time so that we can plan, so that we make sure that almost all of the engagement that people have with the ILS is on quite clearly time limited engagement, and so we can make sure that we don't start anyone on any of those programs at a point where the service would be brought to an end before they had completed that program. So in effect, we have a managed close down, so that people go through the process, they get the full program, they get the full support, and then they leave. So in effect, the last couple of months of the program of the service would be at an ever diminishing rate of activity, because we wouldn't be starting new people, but we would make sure that everyone that was in process had the full experience, had the full program and the full benefit of it, and weren't left in midway. And one of the things that we'll be looking at is the scope to which we can point people to other resources that are available in the community, other resources that are provided by other public sector organisations, or indeed private sector organisations, that people might be able to access should the ILS be closed down. But again, it will need some time for doing that, and we'll need to plan it, and that's part of the reason for making this a phased process. I should say that part of that is we cannot make any judgment as whether the current provider will be the provider, or would be the provider, of the standalone smoking cessation service. We have to go through a full procurement process, and we have to build in the time that were it to be a different provider, we need to have the time for the existing, for Thrive Tribe as the current provider of the ILS, to phase down their service, and for all of the transfers and the mobilisation to happen for the new service. So we're being quite cautious, and I've used the word before, prudent, to make sure that if the executive does make the decision, that we have a managed process, so there's no hiccups and gaps in service.
Thank you for that. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. Several points that I want to go through. I'm pretty sure I heard in the last paper that there was reference made to £8 million sitting in the reserve. So I would ask you, Councillor Clegg, you know, £8 million, looking to cut services. We see within the paper that the consultation that was done through the Let's Talk survey says that, I believe, healthy weight and physical activity are those items which the public and indeed all of the stakeholders that fed into the Let's Talk survey mentioned. I'm really struggling to understand why we are moving monies into children's services, which is when children's have their own funding arrangements, we import people who are of a certain age, retirement age, and that's great. They want to come to Lincolnshire, they want to live in Lincolnshire, but they often come with long-term conditions, and I think particularly of the East Coast, and I think particularly of the inequalities on the East Coast. The proposals within this paper suggest the very things that would ensure that those people were more healthy or were helped to become more healthy are being got rid of. And yet there's £8 million sitting there that could be used for that. And there are services that have been used, which apparently, according to the public, absolutely feel that these services are worth their money and they use them. It's almost as though, are we saying, you know, do as I say, not as I do? Because surely, if the public who use those services, 68% I think of those that responded to the survey had used it, had used the services, surely we should be listening a little bit more to those people and those services that they want, not what we think they should have, but what they want should be provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Woolley. We are listening, and part of the consultation process, of course, is exactly that. And also in that consultation process, it highlighted the benefit providing public health services to young people and families would have. And we have prioritised that in terms of the options that's being recommended here before you today. We're not dispensing with things such as smoking cessation, which is an important factor. And you mentioned older people, but falls prevention as well is something that we're not dispensing with. I think investing in our future, the children of the future, is important. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But what I do think is we can direct people towards making better lifestyle choices themselves. But if we actually invest in the future, that will pay longer term dividends. Thank you.
Chairman, could I then ask, absolutely, children should be catered for, but we have the information. We have the information from public health. The fastest growing element of the number of people in Lincolnshire is the older population. They are the ones that we need to keep out of our hospitals. They are the ones that will clog up the system if we are not careful. And I do notice that within this paper, £500,000 is at risk at the moment. At the minute, the NHS, Lincolnshire NHS, put in £500,000. Can I be assured that that money is going to continue and that they have put to bed any concerns about if we're going to prune the ILS, that they will still want to be part of it? Thank you.
So in terms of the funding from the NHS, as you say, the NHS currently, the Integrated Care Board currently contributes an additional £500,000 a year to the County Council to support the weight management elements of the ILS. Clearly, were the executive to decide to discontinue those weight management elements, then there would be no service for the NHS to contribute to. I have sought views from the ICB in terms of what their intention would be. Clearly, that £500,000 would remain in the Lincolnshire economy because it's the Lincolnshire ICB's funding. Of course, it would then be up to the ICB to decide what it was that they were going to spend that money on. So I have raised it with the relevant member, the relevant executive director of the ICB. They are conscious of the issue. They are looking at the issue. They are conscious that this meeting is happening today. They are conscious that the executive is meeting on the 3rd of February to make a decision. As yet, I have not had a response from the ICB, but I can assure you that they are explicitly aware and also that the funding is Lincolnshire funding, so the ICB would make a decision where they felt it most appropriate to spend that money. And if they wanted to spend it on weight management, then they could, but they wouldn't be an integrated lifestyle service for them to contribute to. They would need to do something directly themselves.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bean.
Thanks, Chair. I've got quite a number of questions and comments, as you'll know, but yeah. And I did try to hang back to give other people the chance to come in.
No, sorry, it was Councillor Bean.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about your questions. They'll be fine.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, we hear talk of cuts, but are we actually cutting the overall budget, or are we just redistributing funds to areas where we think they can have a better impact?
So the spend from the public health grant will continue. So we are required to spend the entirety of the public health grant on things that are eligible for the public health grant, and therefore from a public health grant perspective, the amount is simply being reallocated. Of course, the Best Start Lincolnshire service is a current service funded through the general fund. So in that sense, that funding is currently there. I should be clear that, of course, given the financial position of the council, all non-statutory services, including Best Start Lincolnshire, are under consideration, and therefore we can't guarantee that any service that isn't a statutory service will be available in the longer term.
Thank you, Martin. I've just got one more question, if that's okay. So which services do you perceive receiving the most impact from the changes to the integrated lifestyle service? Will any services be completely lost? And how do you plan to mitigate the effects of this?
So the integrated lifestyle service, as I say, is currently an integrated pathway for smoking cessation, weight management, physical activity, and alcohol use, and strength and balance. So the smoking cessation service would be entirely retained, but in a new form. The balance and stability, strength and balance programme would be entirely retained, but in a new form. All of the other services would be entirely eliminated.
I'll just come back on that. And how do we plan to mitigate the impacts of that?
We are looking at the scope for us to signpost people to other services that might be available in the community. So clearly there are lots of routes where people, if they want to lose weight, can seek to lose weight. We can signpost people to those, but there wouldn't be that additional support for people that really struggle to lose weight, for example, to do that. So we would be signposting to things that are available elsewhere in the system, which are currently available in the system, but we wouldn't be giving direct support to people.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope you'll bear with me. Do you want to go first, Callum? Because I've got quite a lot.
I've got Councillor Dilks next.
Okay.
If you want to go through half of them, Councillor Lee, then we'll move on to Councillor...
No, I want to do them all together.
Do them all
please.
in one go then.
Right.
Brilliant. Lovely.
Right. They're in two areas, really. The first part, I've studied this in quite some detail and made notes because this matters a great deal to me and I don't want to miss asking anything. I'm under no illusions that we'll be outvoted on it, but I'm going to say my piece and the media are watching as well. So, you know, we need it all out there, don't we? So first of all, I looked at the county-wide healthcare needs and outcomes, public healthcare. I appreciate the NHS does the rest of the healthcare. So I don't think anyone's debating how great the need is in Lincolnshire for preventative healthcare, or that One U Lincolnshire are providing a really good, you know, programme and they've got really good proven outcomes. And so I won't go through all that. You know, they help prevent or slow the progression of diseases such as type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, cancer, mental ill health, stroke, dementia and respiratory disease. And I don't think that really they're things that children particularly have. And one of the pillars of the NHS plan, the 10-year plan at the moment, is around preventative health care. So I would expect that this authority has got a duty to work with other partners to deliver the best health outcomes for the whole of the age range, not just children. So I don't understand why the support for adults' healthcare is being taken away and used to shore up other budgets, such as children's services. I'm not saying that children's services don't deserve or need it, but you're taking away the service for adults. So my first question is to Derek. Does the Director of Public Health feel in his professional opinion that decommissioning the adult weight management, physical activity and alcohol reduction services is in the best interests of the adult population of Lincolnshire? My second question to him is, will the Director of Public Health explain to me how decommissioning One U Lincolnshire supports adults who are already overweight, inactive or drink an unhealthy level of alcohol, especially given that we've got an ageing population? And this isn't to Derek, but I would just make the point, should adults really have to compete with children for health funding? Shouldn't the needs of both age groups be addressed, especially given that the county's got an ageing population? So my third question, going forward, if we do redirect public health funding to children's services and totally take it away from adults, apart from the bits that the government give you for smoking cessation and falls, will the authority offer any options at all for adults who need help with weight management, physical activity and alcohol reduction health concerns? I've got a second area, but it might be better to just answer those first.
So did you want the first two questions for Derek and the last one, or do you want all of that for Derek? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Okay, so the first question was, is this change going to be in the best interests of adults' public health? And clearly the answer to that is no, because we're disinvesting in public health preventative service for adults to invest more in children. So that's just a factual statement. It's tough, basically. I'm not going to get into that bit, but clearly the professional view there, we are reducing our offer to adults and older people to increase our offer to children and young people. That's just a statement of fact. I think the question about where the spend should be is clearly something that the executive will make a decision on, and is quite rightly in a political environment a political decision, and that's what the paper outlines. So it boils down to what the balance should be within a finite ring-fenced public health grant, and that is quite rightly a political decision in my view. From an argument, from an evidence-based perspective, everything you already outlined, Councillor Lee, is correct. It all comes from the data that Lincolnshire does have an older population than the East Midlands and the country overall. And of course, the whole point of setting up an integrated lifestyle service in the first instance was to help to provide support for adults to change their behaviours and to take control of their own lives. So that's absolutely correct. Just a point of clarity, in terms of the falls component that we are suggesting continues, that isn't centrally funded. That is something that Lincolnshire makes a decision on. Yeah. No, just to be clear.
But nothing else will be left for adults? Smoking and falls, that's it?
Yes, because that's what the paper outlines is the proposal for executive to decide from the integrated lifestyle services. Obviously, there are other services that are funded by the public health grant that do provide support for adults. For example, the wellbeing service is funded by the public health grant. Obviously, housing-related support will be a conversation at a future scrutiny. That is also funded by the public health grant. So it's not that this is the only thing that's ever funded by the public health grant, but clearly in terms of the primary preventative service for adults and older people, it is the integrated lifestyle service.
And you don't think it's in the best interest of the adults of Lincolnshire to do this?
It's, well, I'd go back to clearly...
Councillor Lee, could you speak through the chair, please? Because we can't hear what you're saying, unfortunately.
So, Councillor Lee asked, is it in the best interests of adults to do this? And clearly it's not, in terms of we are taking funding away from a preventative service from adults to potentially put it into children's services. So that's just a factual statement. We're taking funding from one. Or the proposal for the executive to decide is where the priority is, whether it is to continue to have the balance, because of course we do already spend a significant proportion of the public health grant in children and young people, area. This wouldn't be the only spend, but it's whether we want to enhance that spend, or whether the executive wish to enhance that spend in children and young people, or whether they want to keep that balance. That from my perspective, is the question.
Thank you very much. You want to do your second
Chair.
half?
I've got some more now.
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you
These
very
are around
much.
the public consultation. So page 68 on the Appendix 1 gives the findings of that. It identifies that 60% of public responders and 74% of stakeholders said they wanted to retain the ILS in its current form. The report goes on to say that healthy weight service was the most popular to retain, followed by physical activity, both of which would go, and only after that came smoking cessation and fall prevention. So how do both the directors feel the results of the public consultation, i.e. to maintain all of the services within the 1U Lincolnshire service, validate the option 2 proposal to decommission the adult weight management, physical activity and alcohol reduction services? How do the results of that consultation validate what we're being told today is the preferred option, option 2? And my second question, when identifying priority areas for targeting public health provision, older adults were at the top of the list. So the priority was older adults with the public, followed by working age adults, and after those only came children. Given the recommendation to committee in this report for option 2, can directors clarify whereabouts in the consultation respondents were asked if they would approve of decommissioning adult public health provision and instead directing that funding to other overspending budgets? I mean, such as children's services. I can't see it in there. And I would just add from an earlier conversation, there's no duplication of adult services, and we are actually cutting adult services. I've got a third question, but that's to Councillor Clegg, so it's probably better that one of the directors answers those two.
Martin,
Shall I start then?
Right, you start, Martin.
Thank you. Derek will come in behind me. So this consultation, like all consultations undertaken by the council, it isn't a referendum. It's not a going to the public and saying, you make the decision. This is seeking the views of the people of Lincolnshire, which the executive can then take into account in making their decision. So I think it is valuable that we've run through an exercise which has allowed Lincolnshire people to express their view, but ultimately it is for the executive to weigh that along with a range of other factors and to come to a conclusion. So I think that if the executive choose to make a decision which is slightly different from what the findings from the consultation might suggest, it is because they are looking at a wider range of factors than specifically covered by the consultation. So that would be why it would be potential for the executive.
Can I just say something, Chair, through you? You wonder then why that question wasn't in there then, don't you? But that's not for Martin, but I'm just making the point.
And if I come back to the point about the prioritisation from the public consultation, completely understand why generally the public prioritised healthy weight and physical activity. They are two of the big drivers around obesity, as we know, especially in adults. However, from a professional perspective, my advice to Scrutiny, to the executive, to the lead councillor, executive councillor, is in terms of public health benefit, stop smoking services is the number one, as I'm sure you'll accept, Councillor Lee. We know that if we can maintain the stop smoking service within the wider context of trying to have a smoke-free country, that will have the single best, greatest impact on the population's health. It will also have the single greatest impact on health inequalities, because the rates of smoking in our most deprived communities and certain parts of the communities is much higher than the general population. So that focus on stop smoking services, from my perspective, as I've advised councillors, is absolutely fundamental. That doesn't mean it's an either or. It could be a both and obviously that's something that the executive will need to consider given the comments of Scrutiny.
Thank you. I've just got a comment to make, then a question for Councillor Clegg. I was a nurse for 20 years until about a year ago on a cardiac ward, and I've seen firsthand the impact of type 2 diabetes. It causes coronary heart disease, problems with renal function, leg ulcers and circulation, which mean that people often lose toes or knees below the have no knee amputations. It's a horrendous disease. And in terms of physical activity, some people, you've got to help them build those habits to have physical activity. So again, that doesn't contribute to obesity. People who have mental health problems often self-medicate with alcohol, and that leads to hypertension and stroke, you know, and also that impacts on the children of that family. So I'm absolutely appalled that that's actually going. We're told that this council's under financial pressure, but the money abandoning this service will save is actually small change to LCC, just over £1 million. And I do know that because for many years, Councillor Dilks and I have put together long, hard process putting together an alternative budget. And last year, we actually managed to get an extra £1 million out of the controlling group for flooding. It's all about juggling the numbers, and it's like a game of chess. And we've actually been told earlier that there's actually £8 million left in the public health grant that's not reserved, and that we're above the level. So I do not accept that we need to save this money. My final question is to Councillor Clegg, because you say that you're listening to people, but you did a consultation and effectively you're just ignoring it really, and you didn't put the one question in, do you want to spend more money on children's and not do anything for adults? That wasn't even in the consultation. And it does beg the question, and it's why I'm asking Councillor Clegg this, if it's just a purely political decision, because last week I was at Health Scrutiny and the chair shut me up, but not before one of the other members had come in with a comment that if people want to eat pies and smoke cigarettes, then that's up to them and it's their lookout. And it does feel to me like this is an ideological rather than a decision that is based on what the people of Lincolnshire want. So, and actually I saw a few gestures earlier, so that clearly that viewpoint hasn't changed. But my question to Councillor Clegg is, are you actually listening to what people said in the consultation, or is this purely a political decision, particularly given there is £8 million underspent and you don't have to cut this service? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Clegg.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for the question. And I understand how passionate you are about this, and I understand with your experience as cardiothoracic nurse, I believe it is, or was, that you've seen the consequences of, shall we say, poor lifestyle choices. Well, they are poor lifestyle choices. Well, maybe not always, but in a lot of cases. And I have listened to people. In fact, when we've raised this, we've discussed this previously in September, and I've listened to the media and the response from people regarding the, how to put this, we're all adults. We are all adults, and therefore we do have the, in most cases, the ability to make lifestyle choices for ourselves, whereas younger children don't. And I think the focus, it's not ideological, I think it's moral, that we focus towards giving children, in those early years, the very best start we can possibly give them. There are services out there to help, as you know, people that to lose weight and so on, and provided by the NHS, for example, and there are others, and we would signpost those services to people that want to lose weight. But ultimately, it's a lifestyle choice, and for adults. So my view, and it's moral, it's not political. I believe we should put the money, taxpayers' money, where it's going to deliver most value, so that cardiothoracic nurses in the future will see fewer people, older people, who've made those poor lifestyle choices earlier on in their lives, because we've invested in the future of those children.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to come back on that, please,
Yeah,
because
quickly.
I do respect your perspective, and I think you're just as sincere about it as I am, but you didn't answer the fact that we've got 8 million sitting in the coffers, that we could actually use that, and £1 million isn't actually very much. And I would make the point, Councillor Clegg, with respect, some people are vulnerable. Not everyone can make those choices. You know, people have got addictive natures. I've seen that. And what I really hate is that we're pitting children against adults here, because you talk about taxpayers. Aren't the adults the taxpayers? actually? Do they not deserve a share of the pot that they've contributed to? But I know I'm going to lose this, but I just feel so passionately about it. I think this is a terrible, terrible decision. And in about 5 years' time, when we have to reinstate this, after a lot of people have got a lot more ill and died, I want to make sure, I'd like another recorded vote, please, because I want to make sure that I'm down on record as not being one of the ones that voted for this. And you still haven't told it. You haven't mentioned the 8 million. Can you comment on that, please?
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I will consider it, and we will discuss it at next week's executive.
But you accept we've got 8 million, and this is 1 million.
Unless I'm corrected by the officers, that is a fact. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder for the recorded vote? Yeah. Could you all stand, please, who's in favour of the recorded vote? sorry, Karen. Councillor Lee, you don't have to stand. That's fine. Sorry. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I say it's a pleasure to follow Councillor Lee on this issue, and I feel as passionate. But before I speak, I would like to seek clarity as a newcomer to this, although I was there last October when it was first mooted. I just seek clarity on a number of questions first, if I may. Can you please tell us, and it's to Martin, I think, the overall grant from government which comes for this spending, I'm not sure if it comes for integrated lifestyle services or for public health, and for us to decide what we're going to spend it on largely. I just want to know though, how much of it are we currently spending now, this year, and how much will we spend if the budget proposals being considered today go through? I'll do the rest of them. I've just got 3 little questions really, and I think Councillor Bean actually helped one of my questions, which was, you know, can you confirm that we're not actually going to eliminate services? We are. That's. I heard the answer Martin say that we are, and I just want to make sure I've got this right, that we are. The proposal is to end all current integrated lifestyle services on a tapered basis, except for smoking, which has now been ring-fenced by the government. I mean, I heard the portfolio holder, Councillor Clegg, saying, oh, we're not going to stop smoking cessation. Well, no, we can't. That's what I'm hearing today. We can't. We've been told we can't do that. So thank goodness the government's come in for at least with that fence to stop us doing that. And I've got to say, Councillor Woolley's already raised it, and every other speaker on this side, if I might say, has raised this 8 million in uncommitted in the public health reserve. And that even if all these proposals go through, we'll still be well above the recommended level of reserve in that particular pot. I don't sort of get that. You know, surely if government gives us a grant, it's expected to be spent on the services for which it is given, not put in the piggy bank. Those are my questions. I would like to speak if I can. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Martin?
So I'll start. It's possible that Derek or other colleagues might chip in to clarify further bits. Trying to make sure that I've covered all of the questions that Councillor Dilks has asked. So the public health grant is increasing. It increases every year. Of late, it has been increasing by a little bit more than the rate of inflation. The position is complicated partly by an irony. The position is complicated by the funding simplification because some things are being rolled in and taken out. So you know how government works. So the grant is increasing. I think I can give an assurance that the council spends the grant on things which are appropriate for within the conditions. We do quite often have a little bit of an underspend, and that's how the grant reserve has developed. But essentially, the grant is spent on things which are relevant for the public for the public health grant within the conditions, and that will continue to be the case. So we're not permitted to spend the money on things which are not within the grant conditions. And as I said before, Derek as the DPH and the Section 151 officer every year have to sign off to say that the grant has been spent on things which are within the grant conditions, and you know, I'm confident that they will continue to be able to do that. In terms of the future of services, yes, the proposal in the paper to be considered by the executive is for the elements of for the ILS to be stopped, for a standalone smoking cessation service to be commissioned, and for a strength and balance balance and stability program to be commissioned through a different route, but for all the other elements to be ended, but in a managed and tapered manner. And then the last thing about the Public Health Grant Reserve, as a number of members have commented, yes, there are about £8 million available in that. I suppose the issue is that reserves can only be spent once. And so while it would be possible to fund the ILS or the other elements of the ILS from the grant, from the reserve, in due course a decision would have to be made as to whether to fund from revenue or from reserve, because that would buy a few years of breathing space. I think it is entirely reasonable for the executive to want to take a view about making a decision rather than pushing it off into the future, kicking the can down the road.
Councillor Dilks, have you got any more?
If I can come back, I'd like to say what I like to say. I mean, I remember last year the debate that was had on these kind of issues in was it October-ish, and I understood that the former administration, the Conservative administration, which ran the council until Reform took over last year, had studied the benefits with the contracts coming up, had looked at the and did a value for money survey, a sort of a scrutiny, looked into are we getting value, and they concluded that we were. And so I'm not sure what's changed since. Of course, we've had a change of administration, and yes, this is a political decision, of course. I understand that, but I'm not sure. And also, you know, we're there, of course, today to do what we can to scrutinise the evidence before us and comment on the proposals, on these particular proposals. But as I think, I don't want to go over all the conclusions in the consultation, but I do remember saying last October, when you know, there was one member of Reform here said, I don't think that person's here today, said, you know, oh, the slimming, oh yes, I went on that, oh, very good, I lost a stone, you know, very good. And another one said, why do, yes, it was a member of your group, yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I'm sure he'll get disciplined now for saying it, but there we are. No, I'm sure he won't, I'm joking. Not. And, but another member sort of said, you know, why do we have to support people? And that's the sense, you know, that I am getting at. Why do we support these? And as Councillor said, you know, lifestyle choices, I can see that to some degree. But on my reading of the evidence before us, and I have read it, and the consultation that Reform launched back in the autumn, it does appear to be coming true what I said at the time, that we can see where this is going. And regardless of what the consultation says, and I actually said at the time I was a bit wary of the questions, and I said, oh, don't worry about that, they're going to be all right. But to me, I don't see the justification in the report, you know, and that's what we're here today. Where is the justification, given the, I accept, yeah, cost pressures, I hear all that, thank you, you know, but there is money there, you know, and I accept the need to look after children, of course. But there was nothing in the consultation that said, should we be, as Karen said, you know, should we be spending this on kids or older people? What do you think? We haven't asked that. That's a bit odd. And when we do look at it, I won't go over the same thing, but the most value, this is the conclusion, the most valuable service elements of ILS is healthy, is the weight programme. That's my reading of it. And the preference for, you know, people were asked, do you think it should continue in its current form? Most people said yes, leave it alone. Stakeholders, 3/4 of them said leave it alone. Now, we're not listening. The evidence is here. We've asked for it. We've got it. And I did hear Martin, was it Martin or Derek, you know, attempting to sort of say, well, you know, we don't always have to listen to the public, or, you know, sorry, I didn't mean, you know, I take you were attempting to justify what's in here, but when we look at the conclusion of the consultation even, we get, I thought it was very interesting, this one, that we compared the public survey with the stakeholder survey. And it says in the table that the public shows higher support for stopping the service than the stakeholders do. Well, yeah, 11% of the public who took part said stop the service. 1 in 10. 10, you know, so presumably nearly 90% said don't, but no, actually 60% said don't. But there was only 1.2% of stakeholders said stop the service. And on the numbers, that sounds about like 1 who said, no, I don't really like this, you know. There's plenty more in there. And impact of changes in the table on page 96 says, you know, everybody who took part in the survey, or not everybody, but both groups foresee negative impact, and increased inequality. On this, we are not listening, I've got to say, and it is political, of course.
Thank
what's
you,
the
Councillor
point
Dilks.
of consulting?
Was that your question,
I have
Councillor Dilks?
I have one new piece of evidence that I might sort of bring.
Councillor Dilks, was that your question?
I thought we were in debate.
Yes, we are. You was asking Martin a question.
Oh, I'm happy
you started
if Martin
off with
would,
a, you
if you'd
started
allow
off
me
with
to
a
come back
question.
and finish. Yeah.
Yeah, so can you answer the
You're
question?
very kind, sorry.
From the very beginning, if you remember what it was, Martin.
I think I can. No, that's fine. So I think the question was about whether the integrated lifestyle service is value for money and what has changed. I think that the position is no one is suggesting that the integrated lifestyle service doesn't offer value for money. The issue is, in the financial circumstances of the council, where is it that the council should devote its resources? So clearly the view of the previous administration at the time was that the integrated lifestyle service offered good value for money, and they felt that it was appropriate to go out for re-procurement of that. I don't think anyone can judge what, had there not been a change of political administration, no one can judge what that administration would have said in the situation that we're in now about the ILS. So I'm not making any statement that had there not been a change of political control, what the administration would have said. I'm just saying that we are now about a year later than that, and we are things have moved on, and therefore the executive is having to make a decision on the situation as we are now, rather than the situation that we were in 18 months ago or so, and therefore having to make decisions based on that. And inevitably, the prioritisation between different cohorts of Lincolnshire residents is a political view. We are a politically led organisation. It is appropriate that the administration of the day should be taking a political view based on the advice and evidence that is presented to them, but should be taking a political view and taking that decision.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dilks,
Thanks.
We are aware of all the report. Hopefully everybody's read it, so you don't need to carry on going over it.
No, I appreciate that, and that's why I didn't go into it in great detail, but I have got, you know, I think
fine, you carry on, that's
a little
lovely.
bit helpful. I do thank you, Martin, for that answer, but I think we do know what the previous administration was going to do, because they'd already gone out to tender, and that process was stopped midway, and that's a fact, you know. And, you know, that, again, that's a political choice that the new administration has made. They were entitled to do that. I do think it's blindingly obvious that helping people cut the excess pounds actually saves more pounds of public money in the long run. And that's why I think it's a false economy, personally, not just on the health grounds that Karen has so ably told us about that she's witnessed in the hospital over years as a nurse, but it's about this service, particularly the weight loss programme, is I think does bring benefits in terms of the economy, a healthier, fitter workforce, and reducing pressure on our health services that Karen worked in. Only yesterday I was speaking to a resident who told me how the 1U Lincolnshire Slim and Swim programme has changed her life. Yesterday I was saying I'm coming to a meeting. Oh, I do that, she said. And when she was first referred, this particular lady, she's not, when you looked at the lady, she's not massively obese, can I say that? But I could see, and I knew her before, she said, I've lost 2 stone on this programme. I said, wow, that's really good. And she said, when I started a few months ago, she said, I couldn't get in the pool or out of it without assistance. She couldn't use the steps. I can now, and she was dead proud. And that impact is just worth thinking about. That particular lady was not in a high deprivation area, I have to say. I won't attempt to identify where it was. But I would like to know, and I haven't seen, forgive me if I've missed it, but is the take-up of the current ILS services that are going to be eliminated, particularly the weight loss programme, is there a higher take-up or demand for it in the areas of Lincolnshire that have higher deprivation? I'm thinking particularly on the East Coast. You can see what I'm just thinking, is that... and I do, I can see if people can afford these services, and I think that's one of the arguments for looking at why are we providing it. If people can afford it, then yes, they should be encouraged to pay for it themselves. But there are people who can't, and perhaps these are the ones that we should be helping. So I'm asking on that question. I don't know if you want to stop me there again.
Yes, please.
If
I can. And after you got the answer, could I just move on to another council and then come back to you, if that's okay?
If that's what you'd like to do, yeah.
Yeah, if I can do.
I apologise for going on.
No worries, no
thank
worries
you.
at all. Martin, could you answer that question?
Sure.
Derek?
So the short answer is yes. The service specification says that we are over-targeting our most deprived communities for access to the integrated lifestyle service in the current contract. So, yeah, the short answer is yes. Obviously, we've got all the data. Happy to share that with Councillor Dilks outside of this meeting if you'd like to.
So that's where the biggest impact will be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I will come back to you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. I think probably Councillor Lee has very eloquently, much better put it in words than I could, and it is, of course, wonderful to hear from Councillor Dilks today in the committee meeting as well. But look, this report, for me, acknowledges entrenched health inequalities across Lincolnshire. The proposals before us removes weight management, physical activity and alcohol reduction services, while demand for adult care and reablement continues to rise sharply. And I'm sorry to say this, but it would fail and neglect our residents if we make this decision. I know of, and Phil's mentioned a few, and I've met residents over the years who have accessed these services, friends of mine as well, and it's genuinely turned their lives around. And for me, this is not about us being a nanny state, and I'm all for value for money and efficiency and less government, absolutely, but this is a valued service used by so many people across our county. And the narrowing of the ILS to smoking cessation alone will widen inequalities, particularly in our rural and deprived communities where lifestyle services were previously the main point of engagement. The risk of stopping all of this valued work won't change things overnight, but it will change things over the medium to long term. And I agree that funding Best Start is good to support younger generations, but there is no shortage of money to stop the current level of funding. So this is not a case of supporting one or the other, and ultimately preventative spend will save us money in the future. So we need to also look at this as an investment for us as a council financially, but also in people that we represent across the county. And as I've stated, Karen's far more eloquently stated, we should be supporting all demographics of society, and we are elected to represent the whole of Lincolnshire. And for these reasons, I cannot support proposals that risk entrenching inequality across our diverse county. If we are serious about tackling health inequalities, we cannot do so by removing the very services that prevent problems from escalating later. For me, this is about fairness, prevention, and thinking carefully about the long-term consequences for the communities we are elected to serve. And how does removing preventative services reduce pressure elsewhere in the system? And how does the decision help us close rather than widen health inequalities across Lincolnshire?
Is that a question for Martin or just a statement?
Well, if Martin would like to add anything to it, but I think it's probably more of a statement.
No worries, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Back on a couple of points, right? First of all, we've been told that reserves can only be used once, and that's a very sensible comment, and we all recognised it. But the government settlement this year, we've only got a third of the money. So in years 2 and 3, to me, that means we're going to get more. So actually, we could use 1 million of that 8 million that's washing around as spare, and we could keep these services, and then next year, if we found that we didn't get extra money, we could review it then. We don't have to do this year. That's what I'm saying. And the argument that we can't afford it just does not carry water. And the second thing, I want to correct something, because we've been told that the NHS provides weight management services, and I'm being briefed by a certain higher office here, and I'm told that the NHS doesn't provide weight management services at a community level. Only the NDPP or NHS Digital for those with multiple morbidities, that means when they're already ill, they're not preventative, as 1U Lincolnshire is, or at tier 3 with medication or tier 4 surgery. Both are strictly managed. So to say that if the taxpayers who have paid for these services can't actually have them, they can get them somewhere else, that is not true. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee.
Can we have a break after this, by the way? It's getting
Don't worry, we are having a break after this one, and I am just a little bit nervous because we have got 3 more items as well, so I am coming back to everybody. And he came for the sandwiches. There is no sandwiches, by the way. Councillor Reeve. Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a statement than a question, really. I'd just like to comment on some of the aspects of the way the recording of the existing systems and schemes work. I'm not saying for 1 minute there isn't a large cohort of people out there who don't need to lose weight, don't need to exercise more, don't need to cut down the drinking, that sort of thing. But it's the way a lot of the things are monitored. And looking at the chart on page 58, and smoking cessation is classed as a success if they've stopped for 4 weeks. The weight loss management, it's classed as a success if the patient has lost 5% of the body weight. Classed as a success if they're increasing to 150 minutes of activity per week, which is 22 minutes per day on average, and reduction to 14 units per week, which is still 2 units per day. But a lot of these have got no time limit. Either weight management, 5% of body weight, over what period, and are they sustaining those sort of things? The smoking cessation, what sort of plans going forward are in position to stop people going to the doctors and getting nicotine patches and selling them on eBay, which frequently happens? The weight loss, I'm quite happy to see that dropped, because there's too many situations where if people aren't financially incentivised, because the physical incentive doesn't seem to be enough. They know they can't bend down to put their socks on in the morning. So if they haven't got the incentive when they realise that, by giving them a membership to a gym or a weight loss class, I don't think that's going to make a lot of difference. Councillor Duke spoke about a lady who's lost 2 stone, now goes swimming regularly. But he hinted that she wasn't from an area that was particularly deprived and could potentially have afforded that herself. And so I think people need to take personal responsibility for what they're doing, and not us say, oh, it's been a success because 5% of body weight has been lost, but perhaps if they went back in 6 months, they'd put that back on again. Physical activity has been increased by 150 minutes per week. At the end of the year, are they still doing that? And so I'm quite happy with proposals as they are, and I don't expect anybody to answer on that. It was just more of a statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll come up. Derek, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just a factual statement around why those are the indicators in the report. Nothing else on that. These are all the indicators that Chief Medical Officer recommends, based on the best evidence that we've got. And I'll pick one out, for example, the smoking, the 4-week quits. What tends to happen is you'll have, say, 100 people will set a quit date, then about half of those will quit, and then about half again will be quit at 4 weeks. You can then follow through to 12 months. If people have quit at 12 months still, they're pretty well quit for life. But it costs a lot of money to follow somebody from a 4-week quitter at 12 months to get the follow-up and to actually confirm that they really are quit. It costs more than it would cost to actually just carry on providing the support. So it's not a cost-effective measure. That is the national and international evidence. So all of those indicators are the Chief Medical Officer's, not just for England, but for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland's recommendation. So all of it's based on the best clinical evidence. Completely accept a proportion of people who are quit at 4 weeks will take up smoking as well subsequently, but then they will try to quit again and they will quit and then they'll be quit for good. And that's why we've seen a very significant reduction in smoking rates across the population since evidence-based stop smoking services have been put in place. It's true of all of those indicators.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Dilks, back to you. So it's up to you how long we are before the break.
I appreciate that. I'll be quick if I can. I will be quick. Yeah, look, we all know, and I think it is. I hear the debate, and I really welcome the debate. I think we've had a good debate on it. I'm not sure we've changed any minds, but I thank you for the debate. We all know Lincolnshire has got a higher incidence, and I think it's in this pack. I think I've got it from higher incidence of overweight and obese residents than national average. If we can help people, I accept what you're saying. It's difficult, of course, sometimes, and yes, people should stand on their own 2 feet and pay for it if they can themselves. But imagine the millions we can save. This is the investment sort of angle on. Yeah, it's NHS treatments. That's not we're all paying for NHS, whether it's through county council or national tax, and the impact on people's lives that can be achieved by us offering a help up to residents struggling with their weight. And I think we do. I obviously got a different viewpoint to yourself, but I respect yours, Councillor Reeve. And that's before we get to helping obese patients becoming bariatric, I think is the term. And I'm advised that means largely people over 25 stone with health or social care limitations. There's quite a lot of them, in Lincolnshire right now. And maybe they got that way because they didn't get the help they ought to have had at the time. But would you be surprised to know how many times Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Service is called out to assist the ambulance service with bariatric patients, moving them? In 2021, this is across Lincolnshire, it was about 1 a week, 56. And that cost £24,000 to our fire service. By 2024, that's the latest figures I have that have been provided to me, that number had almost doubled to 106. That's now 2 a week, or it was in 2005. I haven't been able to get the up-to-date figure. But that figure in 2024 was cost our fire service £83,000. Now, I'm not, carrying on with the service isn't going to bring that straight down in a year or anywhere near. But, if we could stop people, if we can stop people becoming bariatric, it has to be a good thing. I'll not go on about the financing. We've said that already. I'll leave you colleagues with that, I think. And I'll shut up. But thank you for the debate. I think it's been a good one, Chairman. Thank you.
Chair, can I just say...
And I'm glad you didn't kick me out today.
Chair, I actually saw that as well on Johnson Ward. I saw bariatric people who had to be rescued by the fire service. Wow. It seriously happens.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we've had a good debate on that, and I really do appreciate everybody's comments from whichever side you are. I really do, and it really does matter to me. So thank you for your comments, and now this concludes this discussion on this item. suggested proposal, which is I move that the committee support the recommendation to the executive as detailed on page 25 of the report, and I move that the summary...
When you're finished, I'd like to move an alternative recommendation.
Okie dokie, yeah, no worries. And I move to move that a summary of our comments be shared with the executive for this consideration. Do you have a seconder for yours, Councillor Lee?
Tell you what it is. My proposal is that we carry on with the integrated lifestyle exactly as it is, and particularly as we've got £8 million in the fund. If we really need to find more money for children's services, let's fund children's services out of that and just leave things. I believe it might be option 1, is it, that it stays as it is? But that's my proposal, and I hope I've got a seconder.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for my proposal? Yes. Right. Well, we've taken my proposal first. Is that...
Just to be clear, because we were obviously on a pre-decision scrutiny item, there's no option really to amend the recommendations. The way we would do that was to include that within the scrutiny comment, and then it's for the committee to then vote whether they agree to put that in the scrutiny comment, and I think that's what's being proposed. So the usual practice would be to include that within the comment and put that forward to the executive.
Mr. Chairman, if it's to be helpful, if that's the ruling and I accept that, then I would ask you to split items 1 and 2 in the recommendations on the paper, so that I have the opportunity of voting against the committee, against the proposals, but agree to the comments going to the executive.
Right, so we're voting on option my proposal first, yeah. Is that okay? Right, this is a recorded vote as well. Could I have a show of hands in favour?
Oh, no, I do a roll call.
You do it, yeah. You do.
I'll be doing a roll call, okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing option 2 first, my proposal, and then we're going to go on to... Yeah, and then we're going on to the second option.
Just to be clear, what you're doing is, are you taking paragraph 1 or the first recommendation on the paper? I think that's what you're taking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So everybody clear what we're voting on? Right. Option 2. So could I have a show of hands in favour, please? Oh, sorry.
Recorded vote.
Joseph is doing the roll call.
Councillor Bean.
Yes.
Councillor Brooks.
Yes.
Councillor Cook. No. Councillor Cullen.
Yes.
Councillor Dilks. No. Councillor Lee. No. Councillor Wimhurt. Sorry, Redfern. Sorry, I got the right one. Yes. Councillor Reeve.
Yes.
Councillor Wimhurst.
Yes.
And Councillor Woolley. And Councillor Young. Yes. Is it 6? Yeah.
Yeah, that's carried. Thank you very much. That's carried. So we go on now to the option 2. Oh, sorry, option 1. Okay, 1.2. Right, could I have a... Are you going to do the roll call?
Yeah, I'll do a roll
call. So you know what you're voting on, everybody? This is for the comments, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. Option 1.
This is to keep it as it is.
Yeah, to keep it as is. No?
No.
I think what the chairman was proposing, that we take a vote whether the committee support the recommendations, and that was the vote you've just taken, and now the vote is whether you pass the comments on to the executive or not.
We want to vote, though. We want to say that we want to keep it as it is. We'd like to have a vote on that.
As long as the committee are happy that that be included within the comments, and then you agree that the comments be taken forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're going to vote on that, including in the comments for this. Yeah. Yeah, you happy with that?
I think what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, you'll be prepared to take to the executive, report what's happened today,
And then the comments
if you
with
give
the
them
extra.
the recorded vote, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, again, Councillor Bean.
No.
Councillor Brooks. No. Councillor Cook. Yes. Councillor Cullen.
No.
Councillor Dilks. Yes. Councillor Lee. Yes. Councillor Redfern. No. Councillor Reeve.
No.
Councillor Wimhurst.
No.
Councillor Woolley. And Councillor Young. So that's six against.
Yeah, so that one has failed. Thank you very much. Sorry? Will the comments go forward? No.
This is scrutiny. Our comments should go forward to the exec.
The executive is here to listen to all your comments and the debate that we've heard. Right, lovely. That item is finished. Thank you very much for your attendance. We're going to have a 15 minutes break. Is that okay for everybody? Is 15 good? Perfect. Enjoy your sandwiches. Agenda item 7, home-based re-enablement recommissioning. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found on page 113 to 146 of the agenda pack. This report seeks approval for the recommissioning of home-based re-enablement. And this decision is due to be considered by the Executive for Adult Care and Health between the 2nd and the 6th of February. The report will be presented by Rachel West and Carl Miller.
Sorry, just indulge me just for a moment, just before we start on that report. Is it possible, and I'm not throwing anybody under a bus here and I'm not creating an issue with it, but can the monitoring officer just review the decision we have taken? Because it just felt very clunky to me in terms of process, and I think it would then help us improve for future meetings so we don't go through that again if that's possible.
I'd second that.
Sorry.
Sorry, are you meaning right now in the meeting?
No, afterwards, but I think
Yeah.
I would like, as a committee member, I would like the monitoring officer just to review what's just happened
course,
in
yeah.
terms of the decision-making process, so then we can finesse it for future meetings.
Yes.
Yeah,
we'll
no,
look into
I
that.
don't need seconding. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you very much.
I think you're absolutely right. Can I say, and I think it's worth looking at it to see, and it's the way that they're sort of set words anyway, aren't they? And it might be appropriate to look at those words and see if they're the right ones.
If they can be
Thank
changed
you.
slightly. Yep, no worries, perfect. Thank you very much. The report will be presented by Rachel West and Carl Miller. Rachel, could you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Home-based reablement is short-term, highly specialised, intensive support provided to people in their own homes to help them regain skills, confidence and independence after an illness, injury, hospital stay or deterioration in daily functioning. It focuses on restoring independence, not creating ongoing care needs. The key service aims are to maximise people's independence and autonomy to self-care in their own homes, empower people to live their best life and improve their overall well-being, prevent or delay further deterioration, and in turn, reduce or eliminate the need for funded care services. The current home-based reablement service is high-performing. Analysis of key metrics over the most recent contract period evidences the Adult Care Outcome Framework Measure benchmarks Lincolnshire 18th out of 152 councils for the proportion of people aged 65 or over who are still living at home 91 days after discharge from hospital after reablement. 85% of people supported did not require any funded services following a period of reablement, enabling cost avoidance benefits for the council. 97% of accepted referrals commence within 24 hours, evidence the speed by which people are supported to facilitate discharge from hospital or avoid admission. Outcome achievement and customer satisfaction reflects that 95% of people were supported to achieve their identified outcomes and 98% of people were satisfied with the care and support they received. A comprehensive commissioning review has been undertaken to support the recommendations within this report, to build on the successes of the current service while seeking to address challenges experienced with demand management to prioritise the use of this critical specialist service. An important backdrop to this commissioning is the system aspiration for a more integrated approach to intermediate care services across Lincolnshire. The Lincolnshire Intermediate Care Strategy remains under development to formulate a shared roadmap for the future scope, joint commissioning and joint funding of intermediate care services across Lincolnshire. The strategy development is critical in dependency with the home-based reablement service due to the innate links with the service demand and future pathways. As illustrated in the report, service demand and therefore the number of hours delivered year on year has consistently increased in the recent contract period. The current service has been encouraged and incentivised to meet all that presenting demand, benefiting the council in future avoided cost, the 400 people a month it supports and the wider system. However, demand during the most recent contract year was 30% higher than the budgeted volumes, creating a cost pressure for the council and necessitating a revised approach to service utilisation and access. In light of the demographic profile and demand profile of the service to date, the report notes the need for an additional 1.9 million per annum to bolster the baseline budget to enable a maximum potential budget of 7.5 million per annum to meet the anticipated demand and inflationary pressures into the new contract period. This additional funding is subject to approval by full council via its budget setting process on the 20th of February this year. The proposed service revised model includes maintaining a county-wide focus on equitable access across the county, strengthening service eligibility thresholds and pathways via a shift from meeting all presenting need to meeting the right need, enabling more targeted utilisation of the support to people most appropriate for this model of enablement and who derive the best outcomes. Flexibility to respond to the advancements of the intermediate care strategy during the proposed contract term, including appropriate break clauses and scope to pilot initiatives that support the collective vision of this emerging strategy. And a continued emphasis on increasing the proportion of community referrals to reinforce the service focus from solely discharge-led interventions to more preventative community-based support. Carl will now outline the commercial considerations for the proposed model and contract period.
Thank you. So the current contract ends on the 31st of October this year, and subject to approval of the recommendations, we will be undertaking a Procurement Act compliant tender process to identify the most suitable provider for the services with effect from 1st of November this year. As noted, the proposed model is to continue to commission a single county-wide service to drive consistent quality and equitable access to the services, as well as providing a viable cost base for providers from which to deliver a sustainable service. Contract duration is a key consideration given the aspirations for a future integrated system-wide intermediate care approach. However, as the roadmap for that is still in development, it's difficult to accurately and with complete confidence align the new service term to that. And additionally, through the market engagement phase, the interested providers indicated a clear preference for a longer term contract, specifically an initial 5-year term, although did acknowledge a 3-year contract would be acceptable, and it is therefore proposed that we will utilise an initial 3-year term for the new service with options to extend by up to a further 2 years. And the contract will be designed with flexibility in mind to enable us to align service delivery to an emerging intermediate care strategy and or respond to changes in budget availability or indeed future council priority changes. Appropriate break clauses will also be built in to the contract to, I suppose, give us maximum flexibility in the event that it isn't possible to achieve alignment between the service that we commission and the intermediate care strategy without first having undertaken a new procurement exercise. In terms of payment and performance management, review work concluded that an activity-based payment mechanism is preferred both by providers in the market and other commissioning authorities for reablement services. And because current demand profiling in Lincolnshire doesn't indicate a requirement for any block funding capacity, it is proposed to retain the current core payment mechanism utilising activity-based payments. Just finally, the performance management approach for the service will place a greater emphasis on targeting and measuring individuals' outcome achievement, and through that the impact of the service overall, and that improved monitoring of service impacts both for the council and for the wider health and care system will also assist in further evidencing the cost avoidance value of the service to support whole system planning for future intermediate care services in Lincolnshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rachel and Carl. Thank you for that. I'll now invite members to speak on this item. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to you both for the delivering the report. Thank you. What learning from the current reablement service has most influenced the recommissioning approach, and how will this help more residents to regain independence, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I think from the report, some of the key aspects that we looked at in detail was around that refocusing of the service access to make sure that it can be there for the future and highly responsive to those that need it. There was some really detailed work around case analysis to understand who derives the most benefit from an individual perspective, from a system perspective, and from a council perspective in accessing the current service. So I'd say the work that we've done to build and design the changes to the eligibility thresholds and the pathways, I think is one of the most significant changes that we're likely to make to the new service, alongside the shift from hospital to community cases. That's referencing all the benchmarking, the best practice, the policy guidance. So far, the current contract, just in the last month, community referrals are up to 25% of proportion of referrals. 3 years ago, it was 6%. So that shift is happening, and we need to make sure that that is maintained, because making sure we're putting preventatives, preventing people getting into hospital by, you know, getting the reablement in at home before they access the hospital is absolutely the way forward.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Councillor Reeve.
Thank you. Just in terms of the staff, if the contract goes from one provider to another, I know in industry, the majority of the staff transfer with the contract. Is that the same situation in this circumstances? Thank you.
It is absolutely, yes, yes. All of the staff employed in the service, if the incumbent provider isn't successful following the tender process, will have the opportunity to transfer to the new provider.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I have got a comment on this, but first of all, I'd like to ask, can we please have a note in the minutes of the members who left before the end of the meeting? Because we've still got 3 items to go, and the agenda would, if you got the minutes next time, it would look as if everybody who was here at the beginning actually stayed for the whole meeting, and I don't think that's not a fair reflection, is it really?
I've already made a note of everyone who's left.
And will we say when
it will
they
be
left?
in the minutes,
Because
yeah.
obviously some just came for the vote, didn't they? Right. My question on this, because I was quite surprised actually that this isn't under attack given the debate that we had on the last item. Can the director just clarify? Looking at this, the whole thing comes, or whoever, is 5 million, 5.5 million, but LCC actually contribute £78,285, if that's right. It's actually government, probably ring-fence funding or something. But just to say as well, I saw this firsthand. It's a brilliant service. It's fantastic, and absolutely support it. Thank you.
So if I can pick that one up. So the service is funded through the Better Care Fund. So that is money that is granted by the government to the council. It's not ring-fenced to a particular service. So the council can spend that money on any service which is relevant within the Better Care Fund area.
It can't go to kids then?
Some of the Better Care Fund is spent on children's services, but it's money that is given to the council by the government to spend on things broadly related to intermediate care. So it's not ring-fenced in the same way that the public health grant is. So if it wasn't being spent on this, there are other services that the council could spend it on.
Thanks. I was being light-hearted there, but I just wanted to be clear. This is government money. It's not LCC saying, "Oh, we think this is great, so we'll give you lots of money for it."
Thank you very much. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, if I may. How will the recommissioned service ensure that individuals experience a smooth and timely transition to reablement support?
In the context of the potential for a change in provider between current and new service?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so absolutely. I mean, a detailed transition and mobilisation planning will be undertaken both by the council, and it will be a requirement as part of the tender process for all participating organisations to give us a detailed transition and mobilisation plan that will be assessed as part of the qualitative criteria in tender evaluation. then post-award, once the successful provider has been identified, we will work to align the transition planning undertaken by the council on its side and the successful provider on their side to ensure that there is absolutely smooth transition of services and minimum impact to anybody who's in the service at the point and being supported by the service at the point it transfers, if indeed there is a transition from one provider to another following the tender process during that transition period.
Thank you. And my second question is, how are you going to ensure that this provision continues with a consistent quality and outcome?
Thank you. We'll continue the approach that we currently have with the current provider. So there's a strategic contract management framework that supports the management of this service. What I would say is, alongside the robust management of the data, we have real-time data with this service, as well as monthly reporting to very high levels of detail in terms of exactly what's happening within the service and the outcomes of individuals. But it's also about the strategic partnership with the provider of this service and provider of future services. This is one of our critical services. So actually being able to work with them pays dividends in that partnership approach. So it's actually the way we work and develop that relationship and manage that provider that actually helps us with the dividends in terms of what we get from this particular service. They have worked with us, the current providers worked with us over many years to flex the service as needed and been responsive to our requests. So it's how we manage that provider and build that partnership with that provider that enables these services to deliver in the way they do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Is there any more questions? Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, you know, I just think this service is, as colleagues have said, I think it talks about the cost of the. It's not a cost. It's an investment. This is an investment in people, supporting people, and it talks in the second paragraph there about supporting hospital avoidance and discharge pathways. You know, how often do we hear about bed blockers and all the rest of it? This is an investment. One of the problems we obviously have is because of the nature of, we have the NHS, but when we save the NHS money, perhaps we don't get the benefit of it, if you know what I mean. But I've got to say, we're all in it together, aren't we? You know, and I just know most people want to live at home if they can, don't they? Whether they're terminally ill or just need helping back to work or whatever it is. I know that. I've got to say, personal comment. My wife is retired, but she was spent a career as a psychiatric nurse, helping dementia patients live at home, and it makes a big difference, you know. So thank you for the service and the commitment to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to double check or triple check that although Councillor Lee has mentioned about the BCF and it being government funding, but that there aren't any local NHS risks because from a funding point of view, because part of the BCF agreement, etc., etc. So we're not running a risk of not being able to either find the money, or if we need to find more money in future, there being any implications with our relationship with the NHS Lincolnshire.
I don't think there are. I think we're pretty secure here. And as Rachel has said, we are looking to develop the service to have more of an integrated strategy. But as things stand, I think the funding is fine.
Thank you very much. No more questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion on this item. I move that the committee supports the recommendation to the Executive Councillor of Adult Care and Health as detailed on page 113 of the report, and I move that the summary of our comments be shared with the Executive Councillor for their consideration. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Reeve. Could I have a show of hands in favour, please? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Agenda item 8, Director of Public Health Annual Report 2025. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found on pages 147 to 188 of the agenda pack. This report seeks approval for the annual report provided by the Director of Public Health for 2025. On the public health case for quality employment, it is due to be considered by the Executive on the 3rd of February. The report will be presented by Derek Ward, Director of Public Health. Derek, please.
Thank you, Chair. Conscious of the time, so I'll go quite quickly and I'll take it as read in terms of the report and the details, so happy to answer questions afterwards. Background to this is that Directors of Public Health in England have a statutory responsibility to write an annual report.
Oh, Derek, did you want the slides up at all or not?
No, I'll talk through them.
No.
You can
Okay,
go quicker that way, and we can always share the slides afterwards if that's okay. I'm happy to, Councillor Woolley will be very happy to stay for another couple of hours.
Yeah, if you can share the slides, that'd be great. Thank you, Derek.
No, we can share the slides afterwards, and obviously the detail is in the report. We've just pulled it out into a slide deck, and I'll pull out the key points from that. Directors of Public Health have a statutory responsibility to write a report every year. Upper tier authorities, public health authorities, as Lincolnshire County Council is, have a statutory responsibility to publish it. But I always think it's useful to come to scrutiny and then to executive to get comments and incorporate those. This year, previous years, I've written joint reports with the previous Director of Adult Social Services before Martin started, with Director of Children's Services, Heather, and this one is with Andy Gutherson as the Director of Place. And the focus is on the how the quality of work improves health and how the quality of one's health improves work, and picks out in particular the benefits to the people of Lincolnshire, but also the economy of Lincolnshire, which is all in the report. The other thing I'd like to say, just by way of introductions, is thank you to Andy Fox, who was here for the previous item, who's led the drafting of this report, and his team. I think it's a really good report. Whilst it is in my name, it is very much a team sport. The background to this really is in Lincolnshire, in England, and actually across most established market economies of the world, where we've got to is a vicious cycle between ill health and poor employment or economic inactivity. Where we need to get to is a virtuous cycle where good health produces good work and good economic outcomes, which then can be reinvested into local and national economies. In a nutshell, that's what the report says. So if you don't remember anything else, that's the key point. We need to break that negative cycle and present it in a positive way, and there are plenty of ways that we can do that. Good quality, secure employment improves health, well-being and life chances, and poor quality work or unemployment harms physical and mental health. And as I've said, health conditions will impact the other way equally. I will go quickly here. The context in Lincolnshire is a context that some committee members who've been on the committee for a while will have seen in previous Director of Public Health annual reports, and we've got some maps in there. Lincolnshire, large, rural, coastal and a dispersed population brings with it some particular challenges, and those challenges play out in the interface between ill health and poor work or lack of work, and good health and good quality work and economic activity. And there are some maps in the report which are almost interchangeable with previous maps that show deprivation, that show digital exclusion, that show our older workforce, whereby the vast majority of our health and work challenges are either down the coast or in Lincoln City. So there are two big areas. There are, obviously, every district area has challenges and opportunities, but there are big key challenges in terms of health conditions limiting work. In terms of the health conditions that do limit people's ability to work, they are things like musculoskeletal conditions, bad backs, bad knees, bad hips, often driven by lifestyle choices, often driven by obesity and lack of physical activity. So there is obviously an overlap with previous conversations. The other big driver is mental ill health. Now that's not necessarily more extreme. Psychoses, it's often things like low-level depression and anxiety. but we're seeing that rise the fastest in young adults, which is almost certainly an outcome of some of the COVID impact, which was the topic of the previous DPH report, as I mentioned. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes and respiratory disease are the other three big areas that drive people not being in either good quality employment or actually being completely outside of employment. The ability for people to work is partly about their health and well-being, but it's also there are systematic barriers faced by certain groups, disabled people, people with mental health conditions, but also care leavers, which is as a county council is really fundamental. Veterans. I mentioned at the beginning of Scrutiny that Professor Whitty came round and we were talking with the medical service in the RAF about veteran health, and also unpaid carers. A lot of unpaid carers would like to be economically active but simply can't fit it in with their caring responsibilities, which again I think Martin mentioned earlier about the work that we do around carers. Public cost of worklessness, these are using international and national benchmarks. We would estimate that Lincolnshire PLC, if you like, loses £1.8 billion every year because of ill health impacting on the people's ability to work. So £1,800 million. That's almost the same amount that the NHS spends in Lincolnshire. We lose it again because of economic inactivity. These aren't people who are retired. These are people who are working age, who could be in employment but aren't working. And that's made up basically around three things. One, lost productivity. Second, increased welfare spending. So people who aren't in work obviously are often eligible for welfare funding. And thirdly, that drives pressure on health services. So in terms of economic literacy and ability to impact, if we can get people into work, it's better for them and their families, and it also reduces the cost of the public purse and the cost to the NHS and social care as well. Why is this a county council perspective issue? I've just mentioned it really. It's a financial argument first and foremost, I think. Secondly, it's clearly a public health argument. People who do have ill health, but with the right support and wraparound care could get back into the labour market, is absolutely the right thing to do for them and their families. There is actually a statutory responsibility on public health authorities, so upper tier authorities, to tackle health inequalities, and this is another area that we really can focus on that. And I guess there's a moral responsibility here about helping people who do want to work to get back into the workplace. The report goes on and describes in some detail the different areas that we can tackle this, whether it's about healthy workplaces and reducing the risk to people who are currently in work, whether it's people who are maybe teetering on the edge of coming out of work either for a short period of time or a long period of time. How can we support those people to either not come out of work but be moved into a different role whilst they deal with their ill health, or indeed if they do come out of work, how do we get them back into work really quickly? Conversations with the RF were really interesting there in terms of what they do. Clearly, it's one thing for a very large organisation like the RF to be able to do it. It's very different if you're in a very small organisation, a micro business, but there are some big organisations that could absolutely follow some of the things that the armed services do around that. And then when people have come out of work, how do we intervene and support their ill health to get them fit and healthy again, but then also get them back into employment, supported employment, vocational rehab, tailored pathways, things like that. The report talks a lot about those. I won't go into the detail, it's in the report. We do have examples of what works well. We've included case studies. Sometimes those case studies demonstrating what doesn't work, and sometimes those case studies demonstrate how we could change our systems so that we will help people get back into work. But just to wrap up really, what needs to change is employment needs to be recognised as a driver of health, and health needs to be recognised as a driver of employment in an economic issue. So, as I said at the beginning, if Scrutiny takes nothing else away, That's the key argument. It's an argument that we've been putting forwards for 20, 30 years, really. And actually, if you look at the history of public health, it is one of the key drivers. One of the reasons that we had another Public Health Act was there weren't enough fit men at that point to send off to fight in the Boer War. And so we had a second wave of public health legislation to try to keep people fit and healthy so that we could protect the empire. At that point, I'm not arguing for that. What I'm arguing for is to protect people's health so that they can stay employed. They can get back into the employment market. In terms of Lincolnshire specific issues, we need to remove some of the wider barriers. We know this around transport, but also digital access to services and to employment. Whilst people may not be able to get into the office, they can still work. We do it, day in, day out. As a county council, there are further opportunities to do that to keep people employed. We need to make sure we're maximising our health services, but we also need to invest and promote supported employment models. That's how we turn the vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for that, Derek. I'll now invite members to ask questions. Councillor Lee? Oh, have you got to go?
Yes, I can. So apologies, a work commitment. Can I just thank Derek for your report? I know this will be your last annual report with us at Lincolnshire County Council, and I know you've personally supported me when I've worked for our previous two MPs on various cases, and me as well as the council. So thank you for all of your contribution to Lincolnshire County Council. I really value your professionalism, and it's an excellent final report from you. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cook. Councillor Lee? Oh, this is it, I know. What's he trying to tell us? Thank you very much.
I would echo those thanks, Derek, because I've said to you before, at the hospital working through COVID, we felt that you kept us safe. So thank you for that. A lot of what you did kept us safe. I just want, it's a really good report. This is a pretty good picture of Lincoln as well, isn't it? But it's a really good report. So thank you for the report. It's really interesting. And just sort of going back to the last item, if you look on page 158, the recommendations of it, it says, provide effective health services that tackle multiple risk factors for developing ill health, reducing the chance of health conditions developing which affect a person's ability to work. Because again, it's about supporting people, working people, and that was in that consultation. That came up really high about supporting working people. And I would make the point yet again that those working people are the ones that are paying those taxes from the jobs that are paying for the services that we're looking to cut. So I think it's just a really important point. But thank you very much, Derek, and I'll shut up about it.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Reeve?
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I was quite surprised to hear you say that the level of deprivation in Lincoln is akin to what we see in place on the East Coast. I was quite shocked at that, to be honest, but I'll take it on board. What I do have concerns with, you say how important employment is for everybody's general health, mental health, all those sort of things. With the levels of unemployment going up at the moment, perhaps because of things like business rates, employers not being able to afford to employ people, shutting businesses down, the minimum wage requirements and those sort of things, is that going to have a knock-on impact that we just don't really know where that's going to go yet? I just wonder whether the government could be encouraged to reduce the impact it's having on employers to take on particularly younger people. Thank you.
I think in the report we focus on the issues of health and the impact on employment. Obviously, they're wider macroeconomic decisions and political decisions that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on. I think what we do in the report is point out that the majority of people who do have low-level ill health want to maintain their employment if they're already in employment, and that's what we talk about specifically. The wider macroeconomic, I'll leave to the politicians, if I may.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee.
15 years ago, when I was a city councillor, I remember at that point we had 2 areas in Lincoln that came up as part of the top 1% most deprived areas in the whole of the country, and that, I believe, was on St Giles and in the Moorland ward. Since then, other wards have been added. I think that's to the top 5%, but I've just Googled it. And if you, the most deprived neighbourhoods, granted this is the 2021 census, but Ermine, where I live, 67.1% of households were deprived in at least one dimension. Bracebridge North and Booton Moor, 62.6%. Pelhambridge and South Commons, 60%. And I know we can all get into the politics about what is deprivation, but these are recognised statistics. So Lincoln, absolutely wonderful place, but it does have areas of deprivation, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. No more questions. Thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion on this item. I move that the committee support the recommendations to the executive as detailed on page 147 of the report, and I move that the summary of our comments be shared with the executive for their consideration. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bean. Could I have a hands, please, in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that.
Could we also note in the minutes our thanks to Derek Ward's
yes, please do that. Yes,
service to this county over many years, if I might say that way.
No worries, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Agenda item now 9: Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Work Programme. This item can be found on pages 189 and 196 of the agenda pack. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Hannah Colclough, Scrutiny Officer. I had a problem last time, didn't I?
Thank you, Chair. So on our next meeting on the 27th of February, we've got 5 substantive items: the Residential Recommissioning 2026, Advocacy Services Extension, exemption to allow for a 12-month direct award for direct payment support services, future of mental health and wellbeing, investment fund, and decommissioning of the memory support service. I'd also like to make a note of reminding everyone that we have the extra meeting on the 25th of March scheduled after the February meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for your presentation. I would now like to invite members of the committee to make relevant statements or ask any questions. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Lee.
Only a question. I shall be having my op at the beginning of March, and I wondered if I'll be allowed to attend the meeting online. I appreciate I'm not allowed to vote or comment, but can I actually watch them online? Is it possible to do that?
Yeah, you can watch them live.
I'd hate to miss one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Thank you for your questions and comments. That now concludes this discussion on this item. I move that we approve the planned work programme for 2026, subject to the consideration of any IIs which haven't been highlighted. Does anyone dissent? No. Thank you. That is agreed. Thank you, and let the record reflect that the total number of councillors did not dissent. That now concludes this meeting. Thank you all for attending, with what's left of you. Have a great day.